All right, and we are live. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to my channel. I'm Tori, and tonight I'm very excited to be hosting the lovely Bookborn for a Book Friends chat. Everybody say hello in the chat. We've got a bunch of people here already.
Hello, Pete, Andrew, Evie.
Yep, Ryan, lots of Andrews. I was told, apparently, Andrew Wizard and Andrew Meredith informed me that a group of Andrews is referred to as an Audacity of Andrews.
Really?
Yeah, which I think is quite perfect.
For the Andrew, those two Andrews, an Audacity of Andrews definitely makes sense.
I think those two by themselves form an Audacity of Andrews for sure. Hey, Pete, Michael. Hello, everybody. Hi, Quinn. We have Spiffbo finalist Jackie Hagan in the building. Everybody, round of applause for Jackie. She wrote Wickwire Watch. Everybody should go read it.
I got your book in the mail today.
It's so good. I'm really excited to hear your thoughts on it.
Excited about that one because I've gotten the most messages in my inbox about like, yes, Wickwire.
It's so good. It's so good.
So I'm excited.
Kaiju, hello, everybody. Well, this is the place to be then, Andrew, because we're going to talk about... Yeah, nice to meet you. We're going to talk about some stuff. I did rebrand to Motley Crew. So I had been calling these chats Book Friends chats.
Well, I noticed that our screen, like when I shared the screen, I was like, we're a Motley Crew now.
Yeah. So I'm notorious for being obsessed with Motley Crews in my fantasy books. And so I figured, you know what? It's time for a rebrand. I was tired of, seeing Jimmy's perfect chatting with nuts brand on everything. And I was like, I should actually have a brand thing going on here. So
I love it.
Yeah. All right. Hello, everybody. Hey, Zin. Hi, Brian. Okay. So for anybody in the comments, if you have questions as we go along or comments, feel free to drop them in the chat. Also, if you, for some reason, are not subscribed to Bookborn's channel yet, there's a link in the description. Go check out her channel and all of the awesome deep dive videos. I love that you do so many deep dive videos, and we're going to talk about that because
we have clipboards on the thumbnails.
We do. Big brain. Big brain videos. Okay, so I want to just kind of dive into, I've got a bunch of topic starters over here of things that I want to talk to you about, but I want to talk a little bit about your booktube journey because I don't know much about like when you started, how you started, and you've got a really successful channel so far. So I'd love to hear a little bit about that.
Well, I started in June of 2020. So I am a part of a large 2020 crew. Were you 2020 as well? Are you one of our 2020s?
I was.
I thought so. I was like, I was pretty sure you were one of the 2020s. When did you, what month in 2020 did you start?
January 1st, 2020.
January 1st?
Yep. Okay. So I predate Philip by 3 months, which I like to remind him.
I beat you. Yeah, see, Pete, we're all, look, I just want to say the 2020 crew, for the most part, we're sort of where it's at. Like, I don't want to be like, we'll accept other people. I'm just saying, like, there's a lot of cool people in the 2020.
I will say the 2023 crowd has been impressive this year. I will actually say that.
You know what? BookTube in general has been one of the most positive, pleasant spaces to be in YouTube. Like, it's like every new booktuber I pretty much like, and I'm ready to welcome into the fold. So I do like to joke about the 2020, but so I actually had the idea, like I wasn't a COVID person though, like because I had the idea, like the name Bookborn, I came up with in 2017. And I was going to start a blog. Okay. And I was just like, I don't know, I had my first kid and I was working and it was just like so busy. So I kept putting it off and off and off. Finally, after I had my daughter, I quit my job and this volunteer thing I was doing. So I was like, oh, I have some time. Like, am I gonna, well, and I read a Brene Brown book. I'll just put that out there. I read this Brene Brown book about like being vulnerable. And I was like, so am I gonna go like do this book thing that I wanted to do for 4 years or am I not?
Yeah.
And I was like Googling to get started and it was like, you can't start a book blog in 2020. Like you either need to be established or you need a visual medium.
Yeah.
So Zach, my husband, was the one who convinced me to do YouTube, which I cannot over explain how vulnerable getting on YouTube was.
Yep.
I didn't want my face connected to my book reviews originally. And like now I'm on YouTube, which is like, here it is. Here's my face.
And all the time.
Well, and my voice, like, and you have to
Yeah.
edit your face and voice.
Yep.
Not a great experience for personally.
Yeah, it's a lot to get used to.
Yes. And I'm not sure I always am. Like I was just editing last night and I filmed late and I was like, cool, I don't look great late. Like it's not my favorite look. Anyway, this is taking
scrap it, film it again.
So I wasn't sure, but then Zach bought me a camera for Christmas because that's how Zach pressures me to do things because he knows I hate wasting money.
Guilt tripping with gifts and He's
like, here's a camera, now you have to.
Yeah, that makes sense.
I got that in December of 2019 and I kind of like planned for 6 months. Like I've never changed my branding. So like I really like spent 6 months being like,
this is what I want to do. What
am I going to do? Like, how am I going to do it? And then I started it and it was just so different. You know what? He has a hunk.
It's really funny because I did not realize how many fans my husband was going to gain by me doing BookTube.
Zach has his own fans. It's fine. He's come by him honestly. But so when you started in January, then how long, like, was this set in or how long were you thinking about it?
So I'm kind of the opposite. And I am hoping to glean some wisdom from you on deep dive videos and planning them and research and everything, because that's something I want to get into more. But my best friend, Sarah, Sparrow Springs, who is an art fantasy illustrator. You guys have probably seen her around Twitter if you're on there. She was going to start her art channel. And I had been kind of like you, just, maybe I want to kind of maybe do this and not sure. And she's like, well, I'm going to do it. And if I'm going to do it, you got to do it. So right. Yeah. So we decided to both just jump in at the same time. I had zero plan for branding or any kind of anything. And my first videos are, like everybody's, well, probably not yours if you had a plan.
Well, I mean, I'll say this, my first videos editing wise and like speaking wise are rough. I stand by all the content.
Yeah.
Because I had actually repurposed blog posts that I had written that I never posted. So like I had a lot of content already.
Yeah.
So I stand by the content, but man, they're everyone's first videos. I'll go watch yours. It's kind of fun. You're like, wow, everyone's so much better now.
I had really long haired. I was kind of trying. I started in like more the sort of YA lit fic area and quickly discovered that was not my area. I did not fit in. I didn't look cute with the red lipstick and the twinkle lights, behind me. That was not my
do for the lit fic?
Kind of. At the time I joined in 2020, it was all about the cute, the floral dresses and the makeup and the tinkle lights behind. And and I did my best, but it was just very much not me. And I took a massive break in between 2021 and 2022, and then came back officially with the brand I have now in June of 2022. And it was like a breath of fresh air. I came back into the community. I discovered the epic and adult fantasy channels, and I was like, finally, my people. Yep. Because I can be as weird and as tomboyish and I want, and nobody cares, and it's great.
It's funny that you say you had long hair because I had short hair when I started.
We just switched.
And so it's just like I took your hair,
switch aesthetics. Yeah.
No, that's so funny because I've been it. Wait. Oh yeah, Andrew, girl dresses and red lipstick. I don't know. I think you could pull it off.
It's funny. We've actually talked about doing a collaboration where we talk about the show Firefly, and we're both going to be wearing floral bonnets for that, for sure.
Obviously.
As you have to. So, yeah.
I always knew it was going to be fantasy because that's like the only thing I've ever read my entire life. Like I'm someone who's just read it. Like to the point where I've tried to research like what happened to me as a kid, that like literally all I ever read was fantasy. Like I never wanted to. So that's funny you say that, because the fantasy crowd was immediately like, oh, you are the people I want. Like these are my people. Like, oh, good. Everyone is just great. Such a welcoming community.
Yeah, it really is. And it's funny because I think I'm still not sure if I just was living under a rock or what was going on, but I just didn't find the right people. I remember Philip I actually met, I think, later in 2020, and I remember subscribing to his channel and being like, oh, he's got such cool like reviews and he talks about epic fantasy and I really want to get into more of that. So there was like a little bit of that. But yeah, it wasn't until last year that I really came back and kind of took the plunge.
Yeah, welcome back.
Thanks. It's been an amazing year, and it's just been, this kind of conversation happens every time I do a Motley crew chat or book friends chat. I get on here and I feel like, even though you and I have never talked face to face before, it instantly there's this kind of like comfortable, yep, we've got stuff to talk about, and it's really relaxed, and it's just a great comfortable community for the most part.
Totally. I think, everyone's just kind of laid back. And we're all like really nerdy and weird. So I think there's a comfort in like, there's really nothing you're going to say that people are going to feel is weird. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, and I feel like, I don't know about you, but when I was growing up, being nerdy and weird in this kind of sense was not cool.
Not at all. And
so now that I'm 32, I'm like, wow, I have friends that are just as weird and nerdy as I am, finally.
Yeah, so we're very close to the same age. I'm just a year older than you.
Okay.
And so I always talk about that. I'm like, you have to remember, like, the last decade, maybe, all of a sudden being a nerd is like in pop culture and it's cool. And it's like, look, I was a nerd long before it was cool. I was really weird as a kid.
You were back in the side-eye era when people would just be like, oh, you like fantasy?
Or just like, it's not even the things I liked. It was like the intensity in which I liked them, which I think is something that's common in like the sci-fi fantasy spaces, is there's a lot of intensity with what we love. Although I will say, you know what? Sports fans are just as intense and they aren't mocked. So just
she has a point. She has a point.
Yeah, it's like the combo. Like, oh, that stuff is weird, and it's the intensity.
Yeah,
kind of weirded people out.
Yeah, and it is really nice to be able to talk about these stories that we all love so much at the same level of intensity.
Yeah,
because that's not normal.
And people like it.
Yeah,
people on like my channel, everyone's channel, will say like, I like the enthusiasm, like the intensity. Yep. When I'm here, you know.
Yeah. Well, and I think that kind of intensity and the seriousness to which we take this stuff is part of the reason why people subscribe and really enjoy the content, because they're like, oh my gosh, somebody's taking this very seriously and it's fun to listen to and really delve into stuff, and it's awesome.
Yeah, I totally agree.
Andrew wants to know, why are you asking that, Wizard?
Yeah, I'm suspicious.
It's probably because he thinks it's funny that we're very different heights. That's probably why he's asking.
Why? How tall are you?
I'm almost 5'11".
Okay, yeah. So once upon a time, I met Leanna's library for the first time. And Leanna and I are like really good friends. Now, every time we go down to LA, I see her. And the first time it was like, I thought, because I talk, like, we are the same height right now. We are talking face to face.
Yeah.
So when I had to walk and see her and she towered over me, I was like, this is just not.
It's just weird.
This is not what was in my head. And I think Alan had like a crisis after I shared this story, because he's like, how tall is everybody? What do you mean? I'm 5'2". Actually, my doctor told me I wasn't 5'2", which really annoyed me. I'm mostly 5'2". I'm almost.
Well, if it makes you feel better, I'm mostly 5'11".
Okay, so. Perfect.
Yeah, so I get that. Yeah, it's just it's easier to say than saying that I'm 5'10" and 3/4. Like who, you know?
Like, right? I'm not 5'1"
Yeah.
and 3/4. I'm
Yeah.
just 5'2". Now, do you love being tall?
There's
Like,
pros
could
and
I
cons.
take a couple inches? How would you feel about that?
Yeah, I think so. I think
if you were 5'8" and I got to be 5'4",
I think I would be mostly okay. It is nice because like I can look across at most guys, which is kind of nice. Because I don't know, I've also been referred to as intimidating by a lot of guys that are just not used to women being that tall, I think.
There's a lot of reasons, because like I've gotten the intimidating thing before, and it's definitely not my stature.
See, that's the thing that people don't realize. Like, you know what? I know some very fierce short women who are
fierce. We have to make up for it somehow.
I wouldn't cross you, you know. I'm just it's that intensity. It's the intensity
for sure.
Yep. Bookborn's first videos are visually spectacular for sure. I'm gonna go back and watch some of your first videos now.
No, it's actually really funny because one of my first videos I tried to do like text on screen. It's totally bad. It's not my first video. It's probably like my fourth or something, but
yeah,
it's not good.
Well, it's such a huge learning experience because I feel like just this last like 6 to 8 months, I've really kind of found my groove finally, you know, and
you're always
who I am.
Learning something
new about I mean the platform and the content is everything's changing constantly. Yes, now I have an axe behind me. I threw out the lipstick and replaced it with an axe.
You know what? That's what we call a glow up.
Right? Especially in this community. Hey, Palmer.
Evie said earlier, and I want to make sure it doesn't get buried, that now that Evie's here, we can both convince you to read Dandelion Dynasty, which is an important thing to add to the...
I mean, I have it. I have the first book. I do. And I'm it's okay. So, I mean, this is going to open up a can of worms because as you know, there are not enough versions of us and time in the day to read all of the things.
Nope.
So how, for you as a booktuber, and especially with a larger audience, how do you deal with, because I'm sure you get pressured to read things constantly. So how do you deal with that? How is your process of deciding what you want to read and what you're going to make content about?
I don't listen to anyone. It's hard. Like this year, like that's one hard thing about SPFBO, because I believe in SPFBO so much, and it's like really important to me to give to that community.
Yep.
And one way I can do that is by being a judge, because but because I have to read so much for SPFBO, and I'm not a super fast reader like a lot of people on the platform, like people who are reading 100, 200, 300 books a year. Like I don't usually like to say how much I read because I just don't like numbers, but I read about 70 books a year. So when you read for SPFBO, I'm reading 15 to 20 books.
That's a big chunk.
Substantial chunk of my overall year. And so because of that, like that usually is most, like I pretty much ignore all book requests now. Because I just like, it becomes a job. Yep. And like this year has been hard, which look, Sanderson's my favorite author. So I'm so excited for every secret project, but 4 Sanderson books in a year, like is also,
it's a lot.
Yeah. And, like, that stuff I'm making for my channel. So I can't be like, oh, I'm just going to wait a month. Because like before, like sometimes you're just like, I love this book, but I'm just going to wait a second before I read it.
Yep.
So my gift to me, like, so when I finished, I just chose my finalist for this year.
Congratulations.
Yeah, it was very exciting. I love it, the book. So
I'm excited to read it.
Super excited about it. And it's Daughter of the Beast, by the way. I feel like I should say that in case people aren't. I got to put the plug in.
E.C. Greaves. Yeah.
Daughter of the Beast. I decided that like the month of October is my month where I get to read whatever I want. Doesn't have to be content for the channel. Well, with the exception of Secret Project 4, which comes out October 1st. But other than that, I'm going to read whatever I want. And like I like to do that at the end of the year. So anyway, to answer your question, It's hard. I do
Yeah.
read stuff for the channel because there's stuff like I feel like I have to cover, but it gets like this weird thing where like right now I just really want to read Game of Thrones. And like, but that's going to take me a hot second to read because they're long.
Yep.
And so, and it's hard. You feel like you have to vary your content anyway. The answer is, I don't know. Was that helpful? I hope that helped.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like there's so many, it's nice that, you know, honestly, it's nice for me to hear that sometimes other booktubers who are much more established also don't always have the answer to those questions. Cause I mean,
do you find it hard too? Because I know this sounds crazy because we read a ton, but we don't read much compared to others.
Comparatively, yeah.
Don't you find it like hard? Like you can't read enough to keep up?
Yeah, and it's actually, there are times where I actually have to give myself some days or even a week off of reading completely.
Absolutely.
Just because I will walk into my room and look at my bookshelves and start feeling anxious and just be like, because it's a desperate want to read as much as possible.
Yes.
But also you're recognizing, okay, content wise, what's my plan? Because as booktubers, it's a little tricky for us to just go off grid for a month completely, because then our channel goes. So, I mean, trying to find that balance of reading things that you're just pulling off the shelf for you for fun. And I mean, I just posted my I'm quitting booktube TBRs video this week because I was like, I'm over it. Like, I feel so boxed in right now. We're just throwing that out for a while because
I loved that video because, I've never done a TBR.
You're right. Yeah,
I've never done a TBR video.
I noticed that when I was scrolling through your videos. I was like, oh, she doesn't do a TBR either. Great. Love that.
Never have. I'm a mood reader, which is also why content creation can be very hard for me.
Yes.
Which is why I felt, I ended up DNFing one of my semifinalists. And it wasn't because it was a bad book, but it's like, I'm a mood reader and I sometimes just cannot push through.
Yep.
Like you just can't sometimes. And I was thinking, like, before you started your channel, were you a reader?
Yes.
Were, right? Yeah. Okay. You would often probably not read for a week or two at a time. And it would be like a very normal,
fine.
And you wouldn't feel guilt.
Nope.
It would just be like, oh, I need a break.
Those were the days.
And so sometimes, like, I'm playing Tears of the Kingdom. I'm super obsessed with it. And it's like, sometimes I want to play Tears of the Kingdom and I have to let the guilt go. Like, I have other hobbies that I enjoy. It can't all be like reading 100% of the time.
Exactly. Well, and I think too with content, and one of the things I was having a hard time with my TBRs was once I had set an expectation, these are the books I'm going to read this month. Well, what if I get a week into the month and suddenly I'm like, you know what? I suddenly want to drop everything and read just Asian inspired fantasy for 2 weeks because I can. Like, because I want to, or I want to drop everything. And like, I have a little pile of translated Japanese fiction that I want to read in the next couple of months. And I've been saying I wanted to do that for months and just, it never fit into the TBR. So, yeah. So it's, let's talk about DNFing actually, since we're on this topic. What is your overall opinion of DNFing? Do you do it?
I never DNF. Outside of SPFBO, which sometimes like just for reasons, like in the first 30 batch, there's going to be things like it's literally impossible unless you're as me who can read, a million books in a year.
Yes.
It's just not going to happen. But outside of SPFBO,
I'm exhausted just watching her read books.
Yes. You're so impressive. I've only DNF'd 2 books, I think, in the last like 20 years. And it was specifically for content reasons. Like something happened that was so disturbing for me personally that I was like, this is just like not a book for me. Yeah. I force myself to finish every book, which also means I have to be more careful about what I start.
Which isn't necessarily a bad thing.
I see both sides. Like when people are like, life's too short, I'm starting to feel that a lot. Like, is that me? Do you do that all the time?
I usually have, like the last few months, I've had 1 DNF a month.
Oh, okay.
out of
That's
the
not
like
a ton.
8 or 9 that I start. So, and honestly, a lot of them aren't even, oh, I hate this book. It's literally just, this is not the right time. You know, like I'm just not feeling it. And I'm especially with review copies or books that I'm reading for indie authors, I really try to be in the best headspace possible to read someone's book, because I know that they put a lot of heart and soul and time into it. And I don't want to like come into it with a bad attitude on the first page.
Totally.
You know, so I'm like, I'd rather wait a little bit and come back and be like, you know what, I'm ready for a chosen one trope this month. It doesn't happen very often, but every once in a while I'm like, you know what, I could read a chosen one for a little bit and be okay. Yeah.
I do think like one benefit of not DNFing for me personally has been like I think I've become a better reader because I'm willing to delay the gratification a lot, like for me personally, because I can get past like a boring thing because I'm used to it. I just have this weird thing where it's just like, but what if? Like I could be hating the book and it's just like, but what if? What if? Like that, it haunts me. Like it's just like, what if that last chapter?
My husband is the same way. This was maybe a month or two ago. He was reading a book and he complained about it every day, and he was so upset about it and just not loving it. And finally I was like, babe, can you please stop reading this book? Like, if you hate it that much, just put it down, read something else. And it's like, he's like 60% of the way through the book. He's like, but what if it gets good at the end? And I'm like, then you've read like 80% of a crappy book just for like 20% of, it's all right at the end.
You and Zach need to talk, because Zach has had this comment, like, just put it down. Just stop reading
it down.
What's wrong with you?
So do you find yourself getting like really angry at books that you're reading sometimes?
Yes. But you know what? There's fun hate reads, because sometimes books are so bad they're fun. Like the worst is when a book is bad and boring, because then like, you don't want to read it. But I sometimes read books that are bad but endlessly entertaining. Those are kind of fun. You know, you can sit down and whip those out and you're like, this is horrible, but that's fine.
I actually just recently, I don't know what I signed up for. We'll see when I get to it. But I was like, okay, everybody's yelling about how garbage book talk is and everything, and everybody's all mad at it. And I was like, all right, I'm going to go online and I'm going to search like what's hot on book talk right now.
Perfect.
Out of curiosity. So I purchased
perfect. A Colleen Hoover. I was going to guess Colleen Hoover or Planet Barbarians, whatever.
Oh gosh, you wouldn't catch me dead with one of those. I've seen a couple of vlogs of those and I'm just like, why?
Okay, so I love watching the vlog. I watched Lana's library vlog of that. Endlessly entertaining.
Oh, I need to find that.
So right for me not to read this. Thank goodness.
See, you say that, Pete, but you're gonna if I vlog that, everyone's gonna absolutely have.
Wait, you haven't read it yet? I was excited to hear what you said. Oh, you haven't read it yet?
I haven't read it yet. So I decided I'd be like, you know what? I'm gonna read. I'm an epic fantasy fan, and I'm gonna read a Colleen Hoover book and see what happens.
Yeah, it's like I know I probably wouldn't like Colleen Hoover.
Yeah.
Just not because like, okay, there's nothing wrong with people liking Colleen Hoover. You know, I don't say that as like a person who is like judgmental about it. Just like you said, like a high fantasy fan reading Colleen Hoover. That's where like
that's the funny part.
That's the funny part. That's where it's like probably just not.
Yeah, and especially, I don't know for sure, but I'm guessing based on the flowery pink cover that there's probably a fairly decent amount of romantic element to the story, which I'm not usually. I'm notoriously picky about romance, as in I almost always hate it.
Too. Yes, unite.
Okay.
Talked about this.
What do you? We need to talk about this, because what is it for you about most romances that you just like can't stand?
They're stupid. Like here's a good thing. Like in any, first of all, I hate love triangles, but in any
TV show, yes.
Hate them. In any TV show where there's a love triangle, to give you some like perspective, I am always rooting for the main character to be with the person they don't end up with, because I always want the stable, like normal, been there since the beginning person. And that's never what the TV wants.
No, because they're not exciting.
Because they're not exciting and brooding and dark. So I feel like most romances in books, they're just like so 0 to 100. It's always instant love. It's always like, I'm always wondering why these characters even like each other. I find it cringy. I don't like any romance
Well, and
scenes.
oftentimes the new love interest of the triangle is usually a very insta-lust situation, which is just atrocious to read.
I'm all about like slow burn. Like if it takes 4 books for a romance to get together, it's probably one I'm gonna like.
Yep. Well, and I always like, I know there's a character in Andrew Meredith's book that has taken a vow, a holy vow, that he's gonna be celibate. Well, of course, that's the character that I'm sitting over here like, oh man, like but he needs love in his life. Like, you know, that's where my brain goes, as opposed to
why do you hate it? Is it for similar reasons? Like that
it's really dumb. And I think too, and this is gonna, I don't want to like put my grandmother wig on at the moment, but I'm gonna a little bit. So I've been married for oh my gosh, 13 years.
I've been married for 12 years.
Congratulations.
Congratulations. I think this has something to do with it. So I'm interested in what you have to say.
We're, you know, and I can appreciate some early young blossoming puppy love. That's fine. Like that doesn't bother, because we've all been there, right? Yeah. But I think the type of romance that I appreciate now in my life looks so different than it did when I was a teenager and in my early 20s and hadn't had that long-standing relationship yet. Because when you know what real love really looks like, it completely changes the way you view romance, and you can spot the fake one in a book so fast. And you're just like, this is so like we move mountains for each other. And I'm like, yeah, but not really. That's not, I'm not buying it.
And it's like, that is funny you say that, because there has been specifically like one of my least favorite things is when a marriage in a book is like, oh, this is a great marriage. I'm like, but it's not. It's not. Right. Like you keep telling me this is a good marriage, but this is not what a good marriage looks like.
Yeah.
We got lots of
congratulations, everybody.
I think that's it. And I've always been a little grumpy. Yeah, there you go. See, that's a totally other reason. Like, what is this? Doesn't make sense. Thiago, you forgot how long you've been married. Actually, that's cool.
He's only at 5 years. Come on, Thiago.
We both forgot our anniversary this year. So like, it's fine.
So you can't point fingers.
No, it was actually funny because my best friend, like forever, is getting married. And she was giving me weekends to go wedding dress shopping with her. And I was like, Zach, do we have anything going on this weekend? And he's like, no. And I'm like, yeah, I looked at the calendar. No. And like 2 days before the trip, I'm on the calendar and I'm like, it's our anniversary the day I'm gone.
Whoops.
So we both had a big laugh over that. Well, and
it's really care. Like dating it's not that the romance is gone, because people always joke about that. Oh, the romance is, it's not. It's just that it looks very different. So like for us, getting a chance to drive to the grocery store in a quiet car and get groceries by ourselves.
Unmatched.
S tier date. And
then it's like, I mean, people always talk about it, but it's just like the comfort. Like Zach and I always say, like, we do not miss dating at all. Like there is no part of us that is ever like, don't you miss those days? No,
it was so stressful, especially in the beginning, because you're trying to impress this person. You're like, I really like this person, and how do I keep them?
It's more about just having like a life partner.
Yeah.
Stuff like you do and experience with, and yeah, it's very different. And I think that is maybe part of the reason why like those romance things don't work for me generally. Mm-hmm. But I mean, there's some. Tell me a romance that worked for you. I always like to hear it. Like anything I've read.
Oh man. I think, have you read Faithful and the Fallen?
I haven't.
Okay.
So there's one in Faithful and the Fallen.
My brain is like, have you read any fantasy books?
Oh, I always go blank, so I understand if you can't answer that question. Like someone asks you and you're like, I don't know. Have I ever read?
Have you read Red Rising?
I have. Only the first 2 books, though.
Okay. There are several romances in that series that I love.
Is Dara, let's see if I can pull out names. It's been a hot minute.
Dara
and like Mustang, are they a thing?
Well, I can't answer that because of spoilers. So everybody who hasn't read Red Rising, plug your ears for a second.
I don't know. It's like, the details
yes.
are so crazy. Okay.
That's one of them, yeah. But there's another one that I actually love even more than them. Okay. There's one in Faithful and the Fallen that's a little bit more of a mature romance that I really, really liked a lot. And it's two very broken people that find each other. And I love that. I love when it's real and they're already like, they just kind of prop each other up, you know, but in a healthy way, as opposed to, oh, we're trauma and broken and now we just, you know, add toxins to each other's lives.
Yeah. And I think, that's one of those things I like as well, when it's like an emotional connection. Oh, Zach loves telling this story. You know what? Zach also cried at the birth of both of our children and I didn't. So it's just...
Well, you were busy.
I was busy. And I also just like don't feel emotion through crying.
That's fair. That's fair.
Yeah, that's true. He also loves to pull out some other stories when we were dating, like when he told me he loved me and I didn't say it back. I'm an honest person. I don't know what to tell you. I didn't feel it then. It's fine. He loves to point out that story to make me sound terrible. It worked out. It's been like 13 years. Exactly. He knows who he married. I think a lot of romances for me are just like too lusty. I want to read a romance about people who connect on an emotional or like intellectual level.
Well, the spice means so much more when there is like a deep emotional. Yeah.
So I mean, if the relationship starts spicy and then develops, it doesn't interest me as much as when it develops and then you're like hoping, you're like, get together, please.
And
please.
that's like when they, you know, it's the difference between, I watch a lot of Korean dramas, right? So it's the difference between the Western TV shows where everybody's like in bed with everybody else in the first episode versus the K-dramas where you're sitting there and your heart is like in your throat as they're like holding hands for the first time at episode 16.
A meme about that the other day. Like they're like, I've watched this drama for 2 years and I'm dying over them holding hands, but in a Western show, it's like, well,
yep. It's so true. It's so true.
Probably like, I've never done a K-drama, but I'd probably I was going to ask, I love Syrian Susan.
I did too. I actually really loved them a lot. And I was really surprised because Warbreaker was not, I'm trying to think, what had I read before that? All of Mistborn, Emperor's Soul, and, Era 1, Mistborn, and 2 of the Stormlight Archives, I think. Okay. Okay. So I'd read some, you know, Sanderson, and I started the Reckoners. I read Legion and something else, Skyward, I think, by the time I got to Warbreaker.
Wow, so you read Warbreaker really late. If you read Skyward,
really late, really late.
Skyward was not long ago.
And I was kind of despairing of ever finding a romance that I liked in a Brandon Sanderson. We can totally go into Sanderson if you want to, but I really loved them a lot.
And I was, so for the reason I was surprised on that one, Warbreaker, let's see. This was a long time. I read Warbreaker like over a decade ago. So I got to think, maybe not over a decade ago. Probably, that's not true. That was a lie, what I just said. I read it like 8 years ago. Yeah, like 8 years ago.
It's hard to remember. Like people ask me when I read Red Rising.
I think I had read the Mistborn trilogy and Elantris.
Okay.
That was all I had read. And then I read Warbreaker. Okay. So I did not enjoy Ellen Vin. I'll just say it. That's like the thing that will get me kicked off BookTube.
I don't like them either.
Or you and I will a wall of this opinion.
Shield wall against Ellen and Vin. Yeah.
So, but it doesn't, but for me, like, because I was so used to not liking romances, like, it doesn't bother me in a book. Like, I still loved Mistborn. Like, who cares?
Yeah,
I don't, whatever.
Yep.
And Warbreaker, because I particularly, 2 things, hate, this is Warbreaker spoilers. Everyone close their ears for 30 seconds. I really hate age gap relationships. I really dislike them. And I usually don't like assaulty scenes, kind of like that would turn into a romance. Like those are 2 things that are huge no-nos for me. Yep. So the fact that Sanderson wrote this in a way that I'm somehow so on board for this romance, it's shocking even to me sometimes.
Yeah. Well, and I think No, it's fine. I was going to say, I think part of it for me was the element of innocence in both of them. I think that's what really sold it for me, was that you knew that like they were kind of coming into this relationship on similar playing fields.
And I always say it's for me, like I've liked a couple other Sanderson relationships, but not nowhere close to Ciri and Susebron. For me, it's one of the only ones where like I completely understand what draws these characters together.
Yeah.
It does not feel like plot convenience. It feels like these are two characters that would be drawn together for so many reasons. And again, like you said, because of the innocence factor, it doesn't feel like a typical kind of gross age gap situation, because it's just like a very different vibe altogether.
Yep.
Yeah, I'm so glad. I love when I hear other people like that one. It's the romance for romance haters.
I didn't love Warbreaker, but I loved them in it.
Oh, that's sad. Warbreaker is my favorite Sanderson.
Whoa.
That's like the hot take of the century. It's fine.
I mean, I didn't dislike it. I have a lot of, I'll text you. I have a lot of.
Well, I wonder, is one of your issues, which was an issue pointed out to me much later that I'm like, oh, I didn't notice that, but I totally see it now. Was it about like who the villains end up being?
Partially, there was there's that very jarring scene about halfway through the book where some things are revealed in terms of the villains, or some of the villains, that I found kind of convenient.
Oh, you message me about this later.
We'll talk about it.
Because like some people pointed out, well, you know what? Well, never mind. You're right. This is way too spoiler. We'll message about this later.
Everybody's like, let's see. I'm trying, because there was a couple of questions and I want to make sure I'm not totally ignoring the chat. You guys have been very patient.
I know, I'm sorry.
No, you're fine. I'm horrible I try so hard to keep up. I will read it, Pete. I promise. I'm very excited to read that one.
Oh yeah. I can't believe this conversation started with Dandelion Dynasty. We never circled back, which is, I understand like it's really hard sometimes to start those bigger books when you're on YouTube. Like we never got back there. I can't believe it's been like 30 minutes, but I understand what you mean. Like it just, even though you know you'll love it, it can sometimes feel like a lot when you feel like that pressure.
Yeah, 100%. Well, and you're not committing to, you know, when you start a series, you're not committing to a book to see how you like it. You're kind of sort of committing to, you know, like Dandelion Dynasty being 4 chunk books, you know, which I'm not afraid of chunky books. I just have to make sure that I have time to commit to the
I'm
series.
afraid of chunky books. Absolutely afraid of
You're in the wrong genre.
Which is so funny because I always tell Zach this, I'm like, I always never want to start a long book because it feels so overwhelming. And then every year without fail, the longest books I read are my favorites. I mean, but that's what I'm saying. Like, that's what I'm saying. It scares me though. When I started, I feel like I can't read this every time. And then I read it and I instantly like so far my top 5 books of the year, the shortest one I think is 580 pages. The shortest favorite 5 books this year. So it's like, I love it.
Yep.
But it just, there's the starting.
It's daunting.
It's just the starting.
Yep. Yeah. I mean, what I had to do in my vlogs for those was I actually gave myself like a little list in my bullet journal and check boxes every 100 pages.
For Oathbringer?
For all 3. Yeah. Yeah. Because that was how I kept my, like, okay, I'm not trying to finish a 1,200 page book. I'm trying to finish the next 100
page book.
Yep. And that's actually, once you've read a 1,200 page fantasy book, it's amazing how easy like a 500 or 600 page fantasy book is. You're like, wow, that's over already.
I might make a reel about this, but I just had an experience a few days ago. I hosted like a little game night at my house, and we do it once a month, and you get prizes. Anyway, this is too much story. But so I chose the prizes, and one of the prizes I had was a book, which people thought was funny, but I was like, whatever. I chose Pierre Nessie, obviously. Wide appeal. And so I was telling this book, and I was like, this is a great book. It's one of my favorites of all time. And it's like barely like a full book. It's so short. It's only 250 pages.
Yeah.
And everyone there isn't a fantasy reader. And they were all like, 250 pages? That's like a very normal book size. Like, what do you mean it's not a book? And I was like, oh, I have been in here for too long.
Yep.
If you hear 250 pages, you're like, is that even a book?
That's like an afternoon.
That's a prologue in Wheel of Time.
Right?
Actually, that's not true. That's a prologue in Malazan. That is 250 pages is a prologue in Malazan. Like,
yeah. I had forgotten. So I read Gardens of the Moon again for the first time this year. Well, for the second time, but it had been 10 years since I read it. And I was like, I forgot how freaking long these chapters are. Holy buckets. It's ridiculous.
Long. Yeah.
You know what, Gruffet? That's okay. Those are chunky books.
Oathbringer, I actually think is the worst one on the first read. I will always say that.
Yeah.
I struggled at points getting through Oathbringer. Now, when I reread it, I liked it so much more, which is unfair. Yeah. I never want to be like, well, once you reread it
on the reread.
Yeah. But I do think that book actually does slow down quite a bit in the middle. It never surprises me when people struggle with the middle of Oathbringer.
Yeah. And I got really mad at the ending too, which is another thing I'll have to text you about.
I didn't know that. People usually like the ending of Oathbringer.
I have some very hot takes when it comes to like,
love it.
I mean, Sanderson is the fantasy author I've read the most. I basically read pretty much nothing but Sanderson in like 2021, I think. And I've read like 13 or 14 books by him now. But I have a lot of hot takes in terms of things I like versus what most people like, and vice versa in the series. I am basic when it comes to Words of Radiance is still my favorite.
That's because Words of Radiance is incredible.
It's incredible. It's just so good.
It is.
And that's the hard, I think, in fairness to Oathbringer, if it hadn't been following Words of Radiance, I think it would have done better for me, just because I was that
How do you feel about Rhythm of War, though? Because I love Rhythm of War, and that is unpopular. That's usually everyone's least favorite Stormlight Archive book.
So I don't mind a hard magic system.
But it's too hard.
But I was like, that book kind of felt like Sanderson just decided to geek out about his magic system for like 500 pages. And I was like, my dude, I'm so sorry, but I don't care that much.
Like, I get it. You know, anytime someone says that, I'm like, I get it, you know? I just also sort of like it.
I know Andrew Meredith had and I cannot find it. He had a question of, it was something about a hate read. What was
my favorite hate read? I do remember that. One hate read I read, this was last year, was Darling Girl, which was when I was still doing Book of the Month. I don't know if you've ever done Book of the Month. I finally canceled it. Book of the Month have you heard of Book of the Month? It's like, oh, okay. I was like, I'm pretty sure you have. Everyone always is like advertising the thing. So I did that for a couple of years and I finally quit it. I was like, this is dumb. Anyway, their fantasy selections are always like notoriously bad. Yep. Every once in a while they'll get something good, but whenever they got something good, it was a book like I already had bought. Right. So like they had Piranesi one month, but like I was a Jonathan Strange fan, so I had already bought Piranesi. Do you know what I mean?
Yep.
So they're notoriously bad. And Darling Girl was one of them. It was a Peter Pan retelling. And me and Leanna read it together, and it was some of the most hot garbage I have ever read in my entire life. But I read that book in like 2 days because it was, have you ever seen like a Lifetime movie?
Oh yeah.
Yes. This was like Lifetime movie quality where it's like, it's so bad that it's almost kind of good.
It's almost kind of entertaining.
Yeah. Cause like, well, I kind of want to know what's going to happen. Like, that was a book from like literally page 1. It was stupid. Like I opened that book and I was like, this is already so stupid. Peter Pan in that book is like, how do I say this nicely on YouTube? He's an assaulter of a certain nature, which already just like, no one wants that. Tinkerbell's like a meth user, drug addict kind of.
As you do.
The main character is the owner of a makeup company, skincare company, which is classic Lifetime, as you know.
Oh yeah.
And it's like she uses fairy dust. The whole thing, it's hot garbage, but it was great. I enjoyed it. I gave it 1 star, loved every second of it.
I feel like sometimes though, like I think one of the reasons why I picked up the Colleen Hoover book on a whim, it was a total impulse buy, but I was like, sometimes it's like when you're feeling overwhelmed and tired or sick, and you go on Netflix and you're like, I need like a garbage reality TV show just to feel.
And it has to be so garbage.
Yeah, it has to be awful.
Better.
And it's entertaining because you're like, are people actually this dumb? Like, not that sounds so mean, but it's kind of true.
No, that's exactly what this read as. And you know, I think what made it worse for me is like people were taking this book seriously. You know, like people were like,
yeah,
it's such a good book, and you're like, but
there's
like,
I mean, I feel like even in the fantasy world, there's books that people will read that I'm like, did we read the same book?
I know.
Read the same book.
And sometimes like I'm like, oh, everyone has different opinions, but every once in a while I read a book and I'm like, if you like this book, I'm like slightly suspicious of you.
I'm slightly concerned.
I'm not trying to be judgmental, but I'm just like, we may not see eye to eye on things. Versus like there's other books I dislike, but someone liking them doesn't surprise me. I don't know if that makes sense. You're like, oh, I totally get why someone else would like it.
Yeah, for sure.
This one, I'm like,
And I think it comes down to like content versus style sometimes, where like there are certain content things that are like an absolute deal breaker for me. And it's not like, I was just rewatching your the history of violence against women in fantasy video today, and it just kind of echoed something that I've had conversations about this, where it's not what the content is, it's how it's portrayed. And that's what makes a big difference, because especially if we're going for the really easy example here with, you know, assault or any kind of sexual violence, it's the how really matters. And I think because there's definitely been some books that I've read that it's like, hey, we need to show that this is a problem by writing this incredibly graphic, horrific scene and giving, like, I mean, it's just, and the language that's used around it is so questionable.
It's just like, you know it when you know it. Because I'm like, sometimes I read these scenes and it's not glorifying it, and it's not reveling in it, and it's not trying to be edgy, and sometimes it is. And I can't always tell you exactly what that is. But I know it when I see it.
Yep, absolutely. We have some other love triangle haters in the chat. I'm like trying to catch up, guys. I'm sorry. Some romances that glorify some really unhealthy stuff. 100%.
Oh, yes. That is actually my other problem with that.
Brian.
Team Edward, Team Jacob. I have read Twilight, so
have I.
For that in good faith, you know?
Yeah. I have an answer for that question, but
I do too. What's your answer?
So
great.
Neither, however.
That is the ultimate correct answer.
Right. However, Jacob at least attempted to put Bella's well-being above his own.
So here we go. I love that two romance people are going to just argue about Team Edward, Team Jacob. First, do you watch any Amanda the Jedi? Oh, she's a great channel.
I'll check her out. She's
Team Bella and Alice in a very hilarious way. You should watch her stuff on it. Like, I don't even like Twilight, and watching her content on that is literally the most hilarious thing.
The bestie behavior between those two was fantastic. So,
so I always think that now. I've never seen any of the movies because they literally gave me so much bad secondhand embarrassment. I had to quit the first movie because I get really bad secondhand embarrassment. Anyway, I'm Team Edward because I am always team the first person you're with. And not that sounded like gross in a weird way. I mean, like first love way. But also because I thought Jacob in book 3 is so gross.
I mean, book 3 is just gross in general.
Jacob is objectively, as of book 2, the better person in every way, like age appropriate and
knew her and her family from before.
Her and her family. But book 3 ruins it, so I have to, you know.
Book 3 is just a bad experience all the way around.
Like, I wasn't even a huge romance fan as like a high schooler. We must have read those around the same time.
I was in high school. All my girlfriends were obsessed, and I was like, okay.
I had a ton of obsessed friends, so I read them. I actually I didn't love them. I also didn't hate them. I was like, I'm entertained. you know, I disliked Bella a lot. Like, I thought she was like the lamest character.
There's nothing there.
Nothing there.
There's nothing there.
I have to say, like, we predate that conversation though, because like now the conversation around Twilight is so annoying. I feel like I need to defend Twilight. Like, people like what they like, because now you're all people who haven't read it. You know, Tori and I, we've read the books. We're allowed to talk about it this way.
I have seen all the movies and I have read all the books.
You can even talk about it more than I can.
I mean, I try not to. But yes, I mean, it is funny because, and I've said this on multiple interviews, but Phased actually kind of the very first spark of an idea for Phased was that I was getting so sick and tired of the toxic relationship supernatural stories that were everywhere. And I was like, what if I wrote a book about werewolves that defied the typical trend of what like supernatural books look like right now? And Twilight was a big part of that because I grew up in it and I was just getting so sick of all of the bandwagon afterwards. And
the copying of not understanding why it was successful. So we're going to copy everything about it, but not in a way that's unique or interesting.
Right. And now we just have an entire bookshelf at Barnes and Noble of copycat supernatural toxic romance. Yeah. Yep. 100%.
Have you read Six of Crows?
Yes.
Okay. This was like me complaining about one of the particular romances in Six of Crows the entire time I read it. I'm
curious which one.
Well, that's true. There's a lot of toxic ones, but in my opinion, the most toxic one is between someone who hates the person that they end up liking.
Mm-hmm.
That makes sense?
I think, yep.
The whole time I'm just like, I cannot believe people root for this romance. Like, I quite enjoyed that duology. I thought it was a very fun duology. I quite enjoyed it. Yeah. But I was like, this is like the epitome of the romances I hate. At least the other main romance that you might have thought of when I said toxic romance, at least there's like issues that are tried to be worked out there a little bit. But even that, I told one of my friends, I was like, the show does it. The first season did it better.
Yes.
Because they didn't, because I watched the show first and then read the book.
Oh, okay.
Because I don't usually read a lot of YA anymore, but
Fair.
I liked the first season so much of the Six of Crows part that I went and read it. I actually think the show improved upon that particular relationship because they didn't drag it so far in the first season.
Yeah.
Like, if you really think someone's going to kill you, there's no coming back from that for me personally. Like, just personally.
Yeah. At least not in a romantic sense. Like, I feel like you can find a kind of mutual respect. And I would argue that I would be okay with it, but you would have to earn the heck out of it. Like, it would have to be a massively slow burn.
In the books, I kind of am a fan of it. You can't help it. You know what I mean?
They're cute sometimes.
It's cute, but it's just like, we talked about it earlier. Like, there's lines to me that like, it's not cute.
Right.
It's not romantic. Right.
Yeah. Pete, I would say keep me posted. I'm not doing TBRs anymore, so I can't answer that question. But keep me posted on that, because I do actually sincerely want to read it. I'm starting the second Greenbone saga this next month, which I'm very excited about.
Oh, that series is so good.
I loved the first book, and a lot of people were like, well, you know, if you don't jive with the first book, just keep reading. And I loved the first book. I think it was great. Loved it. The family dynamics, S tier. Loved it. Perfect. Absolutely loved it.
Yeah. Oh, it's just so well written. Yeah.
Let's see. Haven't read Oathbringer. Words of Radiance was amazing. The Duel, so good.
Words of Radiance, I think, literally of any fantasy book, scene for scene, has some of the most iconic and best scenes of almost any fantasy book. You got Chasm, Duel, the end one where a certain someone comes back. Like, just just great.
What? Well, and it was funny because in the vlog that I did for Words of Radiance, that is probably, I get stressed if I'm really immersed in a book. I'll get really stressed about my characters, you know.
Yeah.
But I actually had to I was up in the middle of the night, and there's a clip in the vlog where I'm like in the kitchen stress eating a sandwich because I was, and I had to stop like every 5 pages during that duel because I was so stressed about it.
That duel is one of the most excruciating things I have ever read in my entire life.
Phenomenal at the same time.
The roller coaster.
So good.
My words of radiance, you have kids, so this will mean something to you, is so I was reading that right after my first son was born. We had a very difficult nursing journey. So I was up in the middle of the night for a long time. I had to like nurse. Anyway.
Yeah.
People don't care about that, but you get it. You get it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I was up in the middle of the night a lot and so tired all day. And I was reading Words of Radiance. I had watched so much TV that I was getting like, wow, all I do is watch TV while I sit here. So I started reading books instead in the middle of the night. And I was reading Words of Radiance for the first time. And I remember my son was asleep and it was like 2:30 a.m. and I'm reading. And I was like, it is 2:30. My son is going to be up in like 2 hours to eat again. I have to go to bed. Like I cannot sit here and just like read at like 2:30 in the morning when I am not sleeping. So it's always a good memory. Like that book was so good that I like just could not literally put it down.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and not to spoil anything, but Adolin is my favorite Stormlight character.
Oh.
So
I love, how do you feel about his romance? Because it's kind of growing on me.
How to say this without spoilers?
Oh yeah, it's hard.
There is a specific relationship that happened, not romantic, but there's a relationship that happens in Rhythm of War that was far and away my favorite part of the book.
Okay.
That has to do with all of that.
Okay.
And there's a big scene with that toward the end.
Okay. Yeah.
In terms of the...
Oh, if it's this thing you're talking about, they're talking about a relationship with Adolin?
Yeah.
Okay. That's the best relationship that's happened in all 4.
It's incredible. It's incredible. But in terms of romance, there's a lot to that. I'm not mad about it. Like it's fine.
I'm not mad about it and I'm not passionate about it. Is that
I'm kind of, you know what? I'm going to jump into the Bella and Alice kind of camp for a minute here because I'm here for the bromance.
Yeah, absolutely.
Honestly. It's way funnier and way better. Like those two crack me up so much. I love it.
I love it. I'm a huge golden retriever doom and gloom combo.
Yep.
Do you read Haikyuu at all?
Mm-mm.
Okay, that's like why I like that manga a ton. Like it's just I'm always down for like that.
Yes, always.
Sort of vibe. But I do want to warn you. You should prepare many stress sandwiches for Jade War and Jade Legacy.
That's what I'm gathering. Well,
because Jade Legacy, I think, is the single most stressful book I've ever read in my life, to the point where like I was getting so worked, like I had to put it down because it was so stressful. So, and I don't usually
Noted.
So just a warning.
Oh, well, and it was funny because I actually in book 1 there was the stressful moments in book 1 I felt like were foreshadowed, so they didn't like take me by surprise, but I still didn't want them to happen, if that makes sense. Where I was just like, I know this is going to happen and I'm rebelling with my entire self because I don't want it to happen.
It's almost worse when you see something coming.
Yes.
In some ways.
It is, because then you have this like it's kind of like, there's that book that came out a few years ago that everybody was around for a while, that They Both Die at the End is the title. Oh. And I'm like, there's actually something really intriguing to that, because you go into it and you're like, oh my gosh, like what? And you're, trying to figure out how you get there, and it's coming, but you don't. It's like going into a haunted house kind of, and you never know when you're going to get jump scared.
Oh. Okay, Brian, Team Barrow, please.
Get out.
Get out. Get out.
Yeah, he made me very angry in book 1. I was very upset. Thanks, Groofay. I hope you enjoy it. See, isn't Alan's Aitmata fan too, isn't he?
Everyone should be. Are people not? Are you not an Aitmata fan?
Not yet.
Not yet. I can say this. This isn't a spoiler for us, this series. The reason well, first of all, you will like her way more as it gets more.
I have
developed.
She and I have some things to settle. First of all,
well, everyone has things to settle with.
True,
but there are some very cool developments with her that I think you will like later. But the love for Ayat for me is more from a sense of, in my opinion, if this book was told from her perspective, the Greenbone side, like the Greenbone Plant Clan, isn't any better. They don't have the moral high ground over the Mountain Clan.
Yeah.
So it's more like Ayat to me is fascinating for that reason, because I cannot act like she's some villain on a hill.
Right.
When none of our characters, some of them maybe, but not many in the Greenbone Clan. I keep saying that wrong.
No Peak.
No Peak. Thank you. I kept saying Greenbone. I'm like, that's not right. The Greenbones are what they are.
Too many fantasy terms.
The No Peak clan, aren't really on the moral high ground, especially like Hilo and stuff.
Hilo's fine.
You haven't read Jade War yet. I keep forgetting.
It was funny because Hilo was a character that I definitely had a roller coaster with in book one. There was a lot of like,
I'm Team Lan.
He's my favorite character.
My favorite character too.
Hands down.
We've got so many good things.
It's funny because I love when all of a sudden because a lot of the opinions that we share aren't that common.
No.
People can't believe I'm like
Team Lan and not Team
Yep. Lan was my favorite character, hands down, in book one. Hands down. The atmosphere. And this was a great example to me of, in my opinion, the perfect balance of a magic system in an urban fantasy setting, because it doesn't overpower. It's not trying to be classic fantasy. It's not trying to have overpowered characters or anything like that. But I think it was just enough of a kind of pulse underneath everything else that it was intriguing.
Yeah. The thing about Greenbone is, I always appreciate when a magic has such a clear limitation. So people are powerful. So it's interesting and fun to read, but there are very clearly defined limitations.
There's costs and consequences.
I think one of my least favorite things as I continue reading more and more fantasy is magic without cost.
Amen.
I just don't like it. Like I want the cost, and even more my least favorite. I'm trying to think, what book was it that I read recently? I can't remember. It was like last year, but I read a book where they kept telling me what the cost was going to be, but it never actually ended up, like they'd be like, oh, it's tiring to use the magic. You'll be tired. But then the characters are never really tired.
Yeah.
It's starting to bother me more and more as I.
Magic systems, I think, are a lot harder to write well than a lot of people realize, I think, because it's just, it's such a fine balance of trying to find, it should be, in my opinion, a supporting cast member, not the main cast member. And that was one of the things that I got a little torqued off about in Rhythm of War, because I was like, where are my characters in this? This isn't like they all just poofed. And I liked that. And especially how there was still an individuality to the magic that each person uses in Jade City. Like you have different, it's the same magic system, but it kind of blends to each person's personality a little bit, even in terms of like how much they can use and what, emphases they might have in it. So yeah, I'm very excited. I'm doing the read along for Greenbone on my channel right now, and I'm very excited to start Jade War.
It's gonna be good. I'm excited for you.
They're so good. And I didn't think I was gonna like Shay or Wen in the beginning of the book, because I was like, oh, okay, here we go. Here's the, these female characters again. And then we get about halfway through the book and I'm like, they're great. Love it.
They're so I had like the incredible opportunity to interview Fonda Lee at our Barnes and Noble.
That's awesome.
And one of the things I talked to her about was that I was like, your female characters are just like so nuanced and interesting and like very specific to some experiences that I have had. And she said, like, in many ways, Shay was a lot of her, you know, like she was writing a lot of her own experience, which I thought was super interesting.
Yeah, I think you can tell too, because you can tell when an author really understands what they're putting on the page.
Yes, absolutely.
And there was a lot of that with Shay, so I can definitely see that.
Oh yeah, it's so good. You guys sometimes you guys talk about books, I'm like, oh, do I need to go reread it? I don't have time for that anymore.
Yeah, I know. With all the Red Rising read-alongs going on this year, it's been torturous because I'm like, I
remember. That part
I need to go back. Sure, Fonda Lee will make me hate Shay in book 2 or 3, but just let me have this. I don't know. I'm curious.
I think any character, I'll put it this way, any character you like after book 1, you can totally still like throughout the trilogy. Like they're going to go through a lot of changes and differences and bad and good things. Mm-hmm. But I don't think there's any character, because all the characters make bad and good decisions. There's just never that black and white.
Right.
There's only really one character that I think is universally hated.
Mentioned earlier.
Yes.
Yeah, the ending to book 1, I was ready to like suit up and dive into the page and take some people out.
Yes.
Yeah, well, and it's cool when you get to the end of a book and you have characters that you like and dislike, but it's not that simple. Like, I think, Hilo is a great example of that, because I think you can have a character that you really enjoy reading, mm-hmm. and also you want to smack them upside the head at the same time.
Well, and just even having a character where like, oh, they bug you so much, but everything they do makes perfect sense.
Yep.
Like that is such a good, it's a good writer when someone is making choices and you're like, yes. And one thing that Fonda Lee does so well in the next 2 books especially is putting her characters in situations where you truly don't know what they will decide, because both decisions could be realistic choices for that character.
Yep.
Which I think is why it's such a stressful book, because these characters are so formed well, and she's putting them in situations where you really are like, I do not know. I'm thinking particularly something with Shay, actually. Like, mm-hmm. I don't know what Shay is going to do in this moment. Mm-hmm. And
I'm excited.
Yeah.
It's funny because Doru was a character in book 1 that actually made me respect Fonda Lee a lot, because she delves into, to me, this was a great example of, it's not the type of content, it's how you portray it, because she delves into some pretty dark and grotesque sides of humanity in that book. And she does it in a way that it's told from the right perspective, in my opinion. It's told in a way that is in no way, shape, or form glorifying. It is immediately like you have this immediate rush of disgust and anger and all of it's so well written, and I really appreciated that.
And there's no part of you, because again the characters are so well written, you're like, yes, this character would do that, mm-hmm. and this system would uphold that, and it's a part that almost feels necessary to understand, the story as being told. Oh, it's so good.
Same, Group A. I got, except for I was reading the physical version, but I was ready to throw some hands. I agree, Susanna. Although,
Susanna, what book are you on, Susanna? That's all I'll say.
First one, maybe.
I don't want to spoil anything, but
as of book 1, I agree with this, but only by a hair's breadth, just because of the epilogue.
Anyway,
there's so much.
I gotta be careful.
It is so hard to talk about these series without like major spoilers.
That's the challenge of BookTube, by the way. Other than the fact that we are requiring so much of our watchers. I always talk about this. Like, BookTube videos have way less views because I'm not asking my viewers to sit and watch a 1-hour TV show. I'm asking them to read an 800-page book. Mm-hmm. 2, a ton of the videos I like to do are synthesis videos. But if I do a synthesis video, that means everyone watching it have to have read the same books that I want to talk about and spoil, mm-hmm. which is so unlikely.
It's hard.
That it just makes these discussions so difficult.
Yeah. Oh, I was even thinking like I really want to do a video at some point that is my top 10 fantasy romances, because everybody's always like, oh, Tori hates romance, which is kind of true to some degree in fantasy. But I want to do a top 10 romances to show like, hey, these are the ones that I really like. But I'm going to have to say at the beginning of the video, like if you haven't read these, spoiler, there's a romance. Like,
well, I think saying there's a romance in a book isn't a spoiler, but what I do when I try to do those kind of videos is at the beginning, like, so it's like number 10, Warbreaker. If you haven't read Warbreaker, skip now, because I'm going to talk about the romance.
Put in the little chapter sections.
I put in all the chapters and just go to the next book that you've read. But yeah, they don't do as well because people get nervous and
it's true, Ryan. I actually really like Hilo as a character because Hilo is
you to do many things wrong.
Shocking. Hilo is a archetypal character that I always gravitate towards. I love the warrior hotheads. I just do. I don't know why. That's just a thing. And I get angry at them on a regular basis because they're often very stupid. And then they have those little moments where they do something right. And you're like,
okay, fine.
It's kind of true, Zen. I mean, I'm not going to argue with it. Yeah. Team, we are not Team Edward or Jacob. We are Team Romance Scrooge.
Team Romance Scrooge. Exactly.
Team Scrooge. So with BookTube, so you kind of mentioned this briefly, but you do a lot of deep dive and, like you said, synthesis videos and like that's something that I feel like I kind of want to move more towards, because I just feel like the discussion around these books, going deeper into the books and the characters is such a fun side of it. But you do a lot of research for quite a few of your videos, it seems like, from an outside perspective. So what does that process look like for you? How long do you take on those videos? What made you kind of decide to do a lot more of those?
So I kind of fell into that accidentally because I don't know if you had this experience. They always tell you to find like your niche on YouTube. Like you're in your niche. We're in fantasy YouTube. And then you have to decide why people are coming to your videos. So like some people, it's really obvious. Like people go to Alan because he's hilarious and fun. And you could watch him talk about literally anything. And like, I don't have a personality like that. I'm not just going to drop people in. That's fine. Like, it's not like an insult. People always think that's like rude. It's like, it doesn't upset me. It's just, I'm not that person. That's fine. I'm not like really funny or whatever. So as I did my videos, it was like other people reflecting back to me what they liked about my content. And saying things like, oh, I like how much data you put in this and research. And it was reflecting to me like, oh, that's already who I was. Like my parents had jokes growing up. They called me the well, actually. They always said that because they said I'd always read something. It was always like, well, I read an article one time.
Are you a firstborn?
No.
Really?
I'm the youngest.
Really?
But only of two siblings.
Okay.
And everyone always thinks I am the older sibling. I got all of the older sibling energy, like just completely. So it's funny that you say that because I absolutely have the older sibling energy. Yes. Yeah. That I always was researching. I'm always super interested in that. In my graduate degree, I did an emphasis in statistics just because I liked statistics. Like it really had nothing to do with my engineering. I just love statistics. So it was already a part of like naturally what I gravitate to. And it was other people saying that they appreciated it that helped me just like lean in.
Yeah, really embrace it.
And embrace like, hey, maybe that's just what will be my thing. Like you come to my channel and it's going to be kind of like that side. So that's how I fell into it. As far as how much research I do, if I didn't have a deadline, it would literally never end. So I put a video every Wednesday, which means research needs to be done by Sunday night or Monday at the latest. So sometimes, I mean, some research, it just takes me forever. Like I have some videos that I think about for a long time and the research just comes like a little easier. So it just depends. It depends how hard it is to find.
Yeah. what were some of your favorite deep dive videos that you've done?
Oh gosh, that's a good question. I mean, I really did like finally doing that historical one I did recently.
Yep.
That was
really
a
good.
really gratifying one because I learned a lot during that because I'm not a huge history buff. So it was interesting seeing like what was actually history and what wasn't. So I enjoyed that a lot. I'm doing your thing. Like, have I ever done a video?
I've never made a video. I don't know what you're talking about.
Oh, one of my favorites I ever did actually was, and this is funny because it's one of my worst performing videos, but I stand by it. It was, I plotted all of movies' ratings, so like Rotten Tomato scores against their budget. And saw if there was, like I did a regression analysis on it to see if there was a correlation between budget and success of a fantasy adaptation. So I specifically looked at adaptations. I had to, this one took forever because I had to, what's it called? Inflation.
Oh, sure.
Calculate all of the budgets.
Wow.
And then plotted them and fascinating stuff because what I guessed was correct, which is really budget only matters after a certain point. You need enough budget to do the vision. And then after that, it does not matter.
Yeah.
So yeah, I love that. I don't know. I want to know it all. I love learning. So that's my favorite part of a video is research. And sometimes I have video ideas and I can't, like the research, I just can't figure it out. And then I have to like scrap it. And that's the hardest.
Because you put so much time into it already.
Yeah, I put so much time on like researching and it's just, it doesn't come together. And then it just kind of, what do you want to research?
Yeah.
Give me ideas.
And taking off the TBR, I think was kind of my way of pivoting slightly into this year has been crazy in my personal life. And so I kind of fell into the slump of not slump, but like, okay, I have to have a video out twice a week and I have to, and so I still am completely happy with the videos that I made, but I wasn't ever getting a chance to really go further and spend more time on these topics. I want to do a bunch of Red Rising deep dives because that's my favorite series of all time. And I have a lot to say about it. And I've never really had the time to really like delve in. Like I want to do one on the theme of self-sacrifice in Red Rising because that's one of the reasons why it's my favorite series. And I'm such a character nerd and I psychoanalyze characters to like ridiculous degrees all the time. I can't do statistics. I do not have a science and math brain to say, like, I would die if I needed to rely on that. But I'm a very emotions and kind of psychology, sociology brain person. So I want to delve into a lot more of that. And I really want to do some like heavy deep dives on some fantasy characters from the series I've read.
I feel like that would do super well. I feel like people love
I think it would be fun.
Psychology, like with their favorite characters. Like I think that's such a cool thing.
Yeah. I'm going to have like a 3-hour video on Severo from Red Rising because he's my favorite character of all time. And I could talk about him for hours.
Yeah, those are fun. They take a long time. I will say, I actually have like a cadence usually, which is I never do 2 deep dives in a row. Like it's usually deep dive, what I call deep dive, easy content, deep dive, easy content. And like during the Wheel of Time coverage, which takes so much of my time, you're not going to get a deep dive. Yeah. Like so you do have to like give yourself a break. Like you're going to go deep into a video and then you kind of need to plan some easier content, I feel like, to kind of balance it out.
Yeah. I'd love to do some content on, and I was really inspired by the history of violence video you did, because I've been wanting to kind of very carefully do a video on sexual violence in fantasy and like how it's portrayed and the ways that throw me out versus the ones that I appreciate more.
That's an important video to do.
It is. And I think, it can be really easy to feel afraid, I think, or not even afraid, but apprehensive about putting these deep dive videos up because, everybody has a different opinion, and people can get very upset very easily about certain like there's very trigger topics that some can trigger big discussions and arguments about it. So it's always a question of, how do I say what my opinion is in a way that translates well to the audience? And it's just,
it's so hard.
It's so hard. And I think that's one of the reasons why I haven't done a lot of deep dives yet, is because I'm just so paralyzed by this idea of, how do I say this? Like, it's not, I know what I want to say, I just don't know how I want to say it yet.
That's the hardest part of those videos. And it's so hard too, because someone will make a comment and you're like, oh, I meant to say that. And like, but it's the weirdest thing about this YouTube conversation is it's not a conversation like you and I are having, where I could be like, oh yes, that's what I meant. No, it's like, it's this static thing that now cannot be changed. and so it's so difficult, because you can't say it all. And then you also have people who won't watch the whole video, which on those deep dives, for me, it's so frustrating, because I really have set this up in a very specific way to slowly cover everything that needs to be covered. And if you watch 20% of the video, you're not capturing my full opinion.
Yep.
And it's difficult. Like, I'm not going to lie. It never gets easier.
Yeah.
It's just hard. And when you're getting into a charged topic like sexual violence and fantasy, my viewership is 80-20 male to female. I think same. Okay. I was going to say, just because of the nature of the books we cover, that's going to be it. In fact, mine actually is better right now. I think the last time I checked, it was 75-25, and that's the best.
Mine's dropped a little bit in the last few months, so, which is awesome. Not great. We love the guys too.
No. Yeah, we get it. It's fine. But that's also difficult, because it is like, my channel is a male dominated space. High fantasy in general is a male dominated space. And sometimes it's taken as an attack of something that they love. And unfortunately, is a lot of sexism that we deal with on YouTube. I have witnessed male booktubers making the same comments I do, and they are received very differently.
Yep.
So I feel like I have to be 10 times as careful in my tone and how I present things. But yeah, I'm an opinionated person, and so it is what it is. Like, I have to just deal with it, even when it's hard.
Yeah. And that's one of the things. I mean, I've had, comments. I've been on live streams that have had some moments. But even some of the comments, like I brought up recently a manga series that I had read that I loved, the dramatized television series. Read the manga. No, actually, Alice. No. Although I am watching the show.
Do you like it?
Loving it. I love it. Yeah,
I love the show. It made me want. I want to read the manga now.
I have no experience. I didn't even know what the character names were. Murphy was laughing at me on one of her live streams because I said the wrong name of one of the characters, and she thought
I've been
really
calling
funny.
them like Marine, Cook, Sword Guy,
the Sword Guy. Yeah. And we're like, my husband and I are like 4 episodes in now, loving it, absolutely loving it.
We just finished 2 nights ago. We watched it really slow.
It's so good.
So good. Anyway.
It's so good. The guy who plays Zorro, McKenna, is actually one of my favorite actors.
Oh.
So I was really excited to see that he was in it. And that was originally why I wanted to watch it. And then it blew up on YouTube everywhere.
Character.
I want his sword earring. So good.
I want a sword earring.
Same. I want all 3 of them.
Yeah, I want all 3. I mean, I only have 2 holes, but I'm sure I could get one that's one of those like twisty doubles,
that you could, or the clip, or the
clip or something.
Yeah. No, actually, the series that I was mentioning was Alice in Borderland, which loved the Netflix show, and then picked up the manga. And I recognize that this is something that happens in anime to some degree. Mm. There's a lot of objectification of the female body in anime, and that's just a truism. Like, it's just there, in a lot of them. But this manga was like unreal. How every single frame with every single female character. And there was even a point where a deceased woman was drawn at an angle that was incredibly objectified. And I was just like, this is absolutely ridiculous. And please go watch the TV show because it's amazing. But the manga is outrageous. And I had mentioned that in one of my wrap-ups, and there was a whole explanation of my lecturing me on how anime actually is, and that it's meant for men. It's not meant for you.
Mm-hmm.
That doesn't make it better.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry to burst that bubble.
Yeah, I got the excuse once, like, well, that's what all men are thinking, so you should deal with it. And I was like, here's the thing, that you need to go reevaluate yourself, because if that's what you're always thinking, that is
problematic
personally.
Right? Yeah.
And I have a lot of male friends because
Same.
I have been in a lot of male spaces my whole life as an engineer and as a fantasy and video game nerd. I'm sure you've experienced some of those things.
Yep.
So like, I know that's actually not true.
Yep. You know, and yeah, it's been interesting because there's just, I don't really like wading into the discussion of like male versus female booktubers or male versus female that, or I just want to have a good time and talk to people, you know? So I try to stay out of that as much as possible, but there have been definitely some moments where I'm just like, okay, like you said, like I have seen other booktubers make similar comments about things and people don't bat as much of an eyelash at it.
And it's funny. I was just thinking the other day, like, I have to say the male fantasy booktubers are incredible.
Oh, they're amazing.
I always just want to like put that out there. Like the support they have given me in some of that stuff, like without asking, like sometimes I will go in my comment section and some of our male booktubers will just be in my comment section being like, dude, not cool.
Well, actually.
Yeah, like not cool. This is gross. Like someone went like gross. And I was like, the kind of support that they're not even, it's not like I even tell them about this. They're just recognizing it on their own. Like sometimes overwhelms me, like with how supportive they are and like recognizing. So I just always have to put that plug because it's not the community. It's it's a small portion of like the watchers, but like the community itself is just
has been amazing.
Top notch individuals. So I always want to put that out there. Kyle's different because Kyle's also like probably one of my other closest friends on BookTube. Kyle's like, I complain to Kyle about a comment and then he's like my Avenger and goes and tracks it down and destroys the person for me. So it's a little more pointed. I'm talking about people like I've never even talked about it to, and then they go down. But Kyle is my my common Avenger. He's always in there defending me and I appreciate.
Yep. Pete actually had a question for you kind of on that vein of how do you handle the comments other than sending Kyle to...
I don't do that often. How do I handle them? Some days not well. Actually, today is a not well day. To be honest. It's some days are just like really hard, and I probably responded to every comment I ever got until I hit about 20,000 subscribers.
That's impressive.
That's when it became like just too overwhelming, but I still tried. Like I tried and you're going to miss some and it's whatever.
Yeah.
But recently as I've grown more in some of my content, like for my own mental health, like it's really been my friends, like, well, mostly my husband and actually Kyle, who have been like, you need to stop reading all of your comments because like it's damaging at this point. It's like affecting you because Kyle, we're talking about
he was summoned.
Kyle, you were summoned. Just like if you say my name 3 times and I get summoned. We're talking about how you're my comment Avenger and I go to you to put smackdowns in my comment section.
Love it.
So it's hard. It just feels overwhelming. Like I didn't understand it before I got on YouTube. And I don't know if you had this experience, Tori, but I am one of my favorite YouTubers for a long time is Sophia Nygaard. I don't know if you know her. She has 10 million subscribers. So now, not when I joined, but she is a huge YouTuber. She's in like lifestyle kind of stuff. So it's a totally different thing. Yeah. Lifestyle is the wrong word, but it doesn't matter. Anyway, she took a break from YouTube. And basically one of the reasons was like, she said the comments were really getting to her, like these rude comments. And this was before I was a YouTuber. And I was like, that's so weird. I'm on her every video and the comments are amazing. I'm like, all the comments are so nice. They're so great. Like, what is she talking about? I was like, well, you know what? Some people are just more sensitive to that. I'm just not sensitive to that. Well, few years later, here I am. And I realize that the comments most people see on a video are very, very, very different than the creator's backside view.
Yes.
We see comments as they come in. There is no way to turn comments off on a video because there are some videos I wish I never received comments for again. And so I'm not seeing just either the normal disagreements, because I love my discussion videos are meant to be disagreed with, but there's like a very normal way and a very hurtful, attacking, stressful way.
Yep.
And so I've started, this was actually, I started recently at a few people's suggestion, not reading comments as they come in as much anymore and waiting a few hours and then going to the video itself and responding that way.
Yeah.
So that some of it gets filtered out, but I just do it anyway. Like, I'm so curious. Like, I want to respond to everyone. These people are commenting on my video. Like, they're watching my stuff. And it's just, it's hard. I don't have an answer. It kind of sucks.
Yeah.
Every once in a while to a really mean comment, I'll respond really nicely. And it is funny because 99% of the time they backtrack because they don't view me as a human. And the minute I respond, they are like, oh, no, 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 no. I get apologies all the time. Not always. Less now.
I mean, at least there's that. Not that it excuses the original behavior, but
it doesn't. But it is like, maybe they are going to start to learn that, like, a person behind a screen is still a person.
Still a person.
So anyway,
and it doesn't matter how many subscribers they have. They're still a person.
They're still a person. Seeing the stuff. So I don't know. Do you have anything to talk about, like mean comments? Do you experience that? I don't know.
I feel like there's a couple of things. I haven't had a ton of that yet. I have had some. I've had a couple comments I've needed to delete that were incredibly inappropriate. I'm usually like, if somebody's just, like you said, disagreeing with an opinion that I have, to me, that's not a big deal, because I recognize, we all come from different experiences. We have different perspectives, different likes, dislikes, etc. So somebody just bringing up, I have a different thought on this is fine. And I actually enjoy sometimes those comments the most, because we can have a little bit of a mature conversation about and see things from somebody else's perspective that we hadn't maybe thought of. But every once in a while, there's a comment that I get I have a fight reflex. So I have to be I have adapted. I'm 32 and I have finally gotten to the point where I do the thing where I like stop myself and breathe before I respond to things.
Oh, I typed out an angry comment and then been like
delete.
Yep.
Yeah. And so I have to kind of like, and I definitely have my close friends that are also either booktubers or in the community that I can go and vent to and just, which is important. Everybody should have an inner circle of people that they can be totally open and honest with, because you need that, I think, in this kind of it's not an occupation, but you know what I mean? Like being a content creator.
Whatever. Yeah.
Because you're putting yourself out in front of millions of strangers all the time. And that's terrifying. But yeah, I have given a couple snarky comments back.
Oh, absolutely. You can't not be snarky.
Sometimes you just, it's fun to just be like, drop a little bit of sass back. And my favorite ones are, and the ones that I have the hardest time with, are people that are responding very specifically to something that I have personal experience with. So, for example, when I do the sexual violence video as a survivor myself, some of the comments are probably going to make me very irritable, because
they're going to be very triggering. Like, I know we overuse that word, but they're going to be extremely triggering.
Right. And it's going to make me mad because people make really big assumptions oftentimes. I've had a couple on my Sanderson vlogs where I had an issue with one of the mental health themes that was handled in the series. And it wasn't that it was in it. It was, again, some of the language that was used, particularly in Oathbringer, that I had an issue with. And people were like, well, I don't have this and I don't know anybody that has this, but here's all the reasons why you're wrong about this. And I'm just like, You know, you're just like, oh man, can you just go touch some grass and make yourself a sandwich or something?
I think that's the thing too, because like I was gonna say the disagreement comments, there's like, there's the disagreement comments that are like, no, I totally see it a different way, or no, I can't believe you didn't like this. I like this so much. Here's why. And then there's like, you're stupid and you don't understand. Maybe just go back to reading Twilight. Well, actually, those make me laugh. But like, they're so like they attack you as a person, and they're just like so like rude, and it's overwhelming. And the other thing that can sometimes be overwhelming is getting the same comment over and over and over again.
Yes.
Even if the initial comment isn't a problem, like let's say you misspeak in your video. And someone corrects you.
Yes.
And then it's like, then you get like 35 corrections, and it's just kind of exhausting. Not that any of those corrections were wrong necessarily. It's just that, well, I've seen the comment 35 times now. Like I'm kind of just over seeing that. In fact, that's what happened to me today with Wheel of Time, because I was so convinced something was happening in the show, and I thought I was proved right. And then the next episode was immediately proved wrong, which is objectively hilarious. And I addressed it in the video. I was like, look, I was completely wrong after I fought everybody about how right I was. That's hilarious. There's nothing wrong. So there's nothing wrong individually with people making fun of me about that. But like after the 100th comment about it, I'm kind of tired. Like, did you have anything else to say than that I was wrong? And like, so it's fine individually. It's just sometimes as collective, I think people don't. I wish sometimes people would like read some of the comments before commenting.
Yes. Be like,
Laura,
70 people have said this already.
Yes. Laura, people came after me hard, which is why I actually have responded to very few comments on that video today. I'm not feeling it. I'm not in the mood.
I feel like, so you've done the authors responding to mean tweets. I feel like booktubers responding to mean comments would be hilarious, actually.
Yes, that is one of, I was planning on kind of doing that maybe. I just got tired. Those videos take so long to put together.
Yep.
And it was also like, when I do those mean reviews, I find reviews for the authors to read. I give them like a suggestion, like here's, because someone told me once, like, well, you've left 1-star reviews. I'm like, yeah, but I stand by my 1-star reviews. I find hilarious 1-star reviews. I'm talking about like hilarious. They're funny.
Yeah.
But I couldn't do that for a YouTuber. Like I'd have to ask them to go find a mean comment, because they're kind of actually hard to find on other people's videos because they're so buried.
Yep.
So that's like a lot of work to ask someone to like, hey, can you go through your individual comment trauma and find one that you feel like reading? That you think is funny?
Yeah.
This is like a harder vibe.
It is. Whenever you have to gather a group of people for a video, it is an experience.
Yeah.
It's fun, but it's an experience.
Oh, Laura, you messaged me. I haven't been on my messages. But see, it's okay, Laura, because you were wrong, but you're also like someone I know. It's a little different when someone you know is making fun of you about it versus strangers.
That's a big thing, and I've seen this happen so many times where I think as a whole, those of us in the community that know each other to some degree, like we joke and tease and stuff all the time. And sometimes people will jump in right away and start adding to that jab, but if you don't know that person, then you're like, well, hang on a second, because like,
no, thank you.
Hold on, we're not at that point in our relationship yet.
Oh yeah, Laura, we talked last night. I don't even remember. That's fine. I am like, this is where I am today. I'm so tired. Yeah. So I think.
Kyle, I knew you would be able to.
Yeah, I was wondering where Kyle was. That's the first thing I thought of. Actually,
it's so true though. I mean, it's always hard because I feel like you never want to. I show affection to my friends by teasing them. And absolutely. I think, a lot of us do that. The more I tease you, the more that we're friends usually. But yeah, it can be. I mean, to be totally transparent, one of the reasons I haven't read the second half of the Red Rising series yet is because I went through a period early this year where people started calling me a fake fan jokingly because I hadn't read the rest of the series yet. And I'm the type of person who's incredibly stubborn. And if I'm challenged, I will double down more, which isn't always healthy. But I was like, I could never read the second half of this series and just read the first 3 books and still be just as big of a Red Rising fan as anybody else. Like, it is my favorite series just based on the 3 books. And that's okay. Like, you know.
Did you trigger a lot of people? Because I said that recently in a reel, basically. Not that exact thing, but I basically said you can be a fan, like, at any point. Like, if you've just seen the Lord of the Rings movies and haven't read the books, you can still be a Lord of the Rings fan.
Yes.
Like,
I don't know why that's such a hard concept.
And people, I was not expecting.
Yeah.
Wow, that one really riled people up. They were like, fan means fanatic. You can't be a fanatic unless you know everything. I'm like, but that's not true. Like, no. I know a ton about the Cosmere. Like, because that is how I personally enjoy interacting with it. But someone could read all of Brandon Sanderson and not know the Cosmere exists, and they would be still as big of a fan. Like, it doesn't have to be like this one-to-one.
Yeah.
It's not a currency. Anyway.
I apparently have excommunicated myself from the Sanderson fandom because I am not a fan of wit.
Okay, that's fine.
Which is one of my, like, apparently greatest sins when it comes to the Sanderson. Like,
the true story, so sure.
Everybody's like, I can't believe that you don't like people. That is probably one of the most common. I don't like wit and I don't like lift. And oh my, I don't
like lift either. There's a lot of us. You, me, Alex Nieves.
But wit apparently is like the deity of the Cosmere, and I'm like, I don't get it, guys. I'm sorry. But
that's so funny.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I mean, that's true, Brian. And I also knew, like, going into the second half of the series that things were going to get a lot grimmer and a lot darker. And I needed to be ready for that, you know, because these are characters that have meant a lot to me for, you know, probably close to at least a decade, close to, not quite, but at least, you know, 6 years, 5-6 years. And that's a long time. So I'm like, I'm not ready for that yet.
Yeah. I don't think, I mean, it's also like, it's the first trilogy. Like, would you say that someone couldn't be a rabid Mistborn fan if they hadn't read Era 2? That makes no sense to me. You absolutely did.
Right. Or like here's a good one.
I like Era 1. So
if it's like, you can't be a Hunger Games fan if you haven't read Songbirds and Snakes.
I haven't read it yet, and I love the Hunger
Games. I haven't either.
I'm gonna read it right before the movie comes out, and then I'll get to it. You know.
Yeah. I don't understand wit. I don't understand the love that everybody has for this character. I don't understand it. I find him incredibly annoying, and every time he's on the page, I just wait for him to leave. So, like, and I don't know why that's so like, everybody gets really, like, it really rankles their chips that I don't like wit. I don't understand.
I mean, I can understand a little bit. I really do like wit, but after reading Yumi and the Nightmare Painter, which I don't know if you've read that one yet.
I want to.
Wit as a narrator worked less for me in that one. I think for some of the same reasons, sometimes that lift doesn't work for me, which is like Sanderson's brand of humor isn't necessarily like my particular brand of humor. So like when some characters need to lean in to that side, like I'm not necessarily going to like vibe with it. So to me, like that as an opinion makes sense. But like also, I just don't get that fired up about that. You know what I mean?
Yeah. That's the thing. Like, if people, I don't understand why people get really upset about not liking, like, your favorite character versus my favorite character might be completely different. And
I understand getting, like, I do get rankled sometimes if someone's like hating on a series I love and they're just doing it in a rude way.
Yeah.
That can be really annoying to me. But if you like the thing that I like, but we have different opinions within that thing, I don't care. Like, if we both love a series and you hate my favorite character, that doesn't bother me at all because we both love the thing. So at this point, who cares?
Right. We can just talk about, it gets exciting. Well, and I think it's more fun to have discussions where the two people talking or group of people talking have a different perspective on the same story, because we're all coming into it from different experiences. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Bye, Kyle.
Yes, Kyle, this is one of my favorite sayings that really rankles my chips. I don't even know where it came from, but yeah, it's I kind of had Sanderson burnout after 2021 because I just read so much of him.
I think it must be so hard being a newer fan
Yeah.
Just from the sheer volume of content.
Because you've been reading him from when things were coming out more.
Well, more because my first Sanderson was actually the end of the Wheel of Time. I'm trying to think.
Sure.
I think that came out in 2013.
Has it been that long already?
Yeah, I think so.
Wow.
You know what? This is just going to be so easy to check. We'll just.
That seems like it just happened.
It does, but I remember what year it was in. Oh, it was 2012. So 2012 it came out, and I read Mistborn that year.
Okay.
So I guess it has been like over a decade.
Yeah.
So when I read it, like only 2 Stormlight Archive books were out. So yeah, actually, when I think about that, it was just really, I had Alloy of Law, the Mistborn trilogy, Elantris, Warbreaker, and the first 2 Stormlights.
Wow.
And Emperor's Soul. Maybe.
Which is excellent. I love that one.
Oh yeah, I love that one. So that sounds like a lot, but like it wasn't really, especially because I read Stormlight Archive in the throes of like a newborn.
Yeah.
So it's been, so when you're only, okay, I just like my brain broke. Way easier. Like, because I've had a day, like it's so much slower.
Yeah.
Then I just always think like now Sanderson's more popular than ever, and having to try to get into his books now just seems so overwhelming to me.
Well, I had like massive, because I read Mistborn. That was my first adult epic fantasy back in college. And after I read those 3, I didn't read any other Sanderson until I started BookTube again.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So like in 2020. I don't think. Yeah, I'm pretty sure I hadn't read anything else. And yeah, I binged through Way of Kings to Oathbringer in like the span of about 6 months, I think. And that was a lot.
Yeah. That's so funny because like Mistborn was my second like adult fantasy series in college. So it's funny that we kind of started reading that.
What was your one?
Wheel of Time.
Oh, okay. Sure.
So I read Wheel of Time, and that's how I found Sanderson, kind of. A friend recommended. Anyway. But Wheel of Time was the first, and then I was like, oh, this is great. Why am I reading so much YA? I guess.
Yep.
I mean, it'll be interesting. Tori, I wonder if this is you. I find generally a lot of women I talk to hesitate from moving on from YA because of the graphic nature of content that felt like adult had. That was holding me back because I'd go to the library as a teen, pick random books off, and it was just like stuff that I was not interested in reading. And so it scared me off for a long time. And I stayed in YA for a while. And then once I found books like Wheel of Time and Sanderson that were adult without being like that
gruesome
gratuitous or like gruesome, dark, assaults was definitely something like I wasn't really into reading. It kind of, I mean, now I read stuff like that because at some point you just read it all. But it was a nice like step. And then I kind of like understood like, oh, I kind of am ready for this.
I went from Mistborn to, I read a series called Godspeaker by Karen Miller.
I don't even know that one.
Right after that, it was The Hammer of God, I think is the first. No, Empress is the first one. Anyways, very like lots of very grim adult fantasy content. And then I was gifted Gardens of the Moon was actually the third one, which was a little bit of a baptism by fire because I was not ready for it. I loved it, but I had no idea what was going on.
So Tori, you and I have very similar Gardens of the Moon experiences.
Was that one of your first ones too?
It was like it wasn't quite as early, but it was like in the first year or two, I went to a used bookstore. And I was like, like Zach was like, I think I've heard a lot of people talk about that. And I was like, oh, well, it's here for $2. So
let's try
it. And I read it and I was like, well, that was really good, but I'm too stupid. I was like, clearly, I'm just not smart enough for this series. So I guess I can't read it. Because I wasn't on any online community. So no one was there to tell me.
Have you continued that series ever?
This year. So I reread Gardens this year.
Yeah,
and I read 3 of them now.
Okay. So now what my experience was with this, and I'm curious to see if it was for you too, is I actually did a video about rereading Malazan 10 years later. And
how far in Malazan did you get at the time?
I had finished House of Chains.
Okay.
So I will be rereading. Yes. So
Okay.
now I'll be picking up with Midnight Tides and continuing as I go through it again. I didn't think it was actually, because a lot of people, I hate when people say, oh, it's better on a reread. Because even if when that's true for books, it's like, yeah, but you should be able to get something out of it the first time.
Tori, thank you.
It drives me nuts when people say. And that, and the other one that I can't stand is, oh, just get to book 6, 7, 8, 9 in the series. It'll be great.
Look, I love you, Malazan fans. You're great, but you guys say these things so
all the time.
frequently.
I usually tell people that Gardens is a really tough first book. It's a really tough first book. To me, it's like Dead House Gates was the one that grabbed me because I liked the characters in Gardens enough to continue, which was hilarious, knowing that when we go to book 2, it's like, and a completely new cast. But Dead House hit me at just the right time, and I was really resonating with a lot of the things that were happening in the story at the time. And it is still my favorite fantasy, so like single fantasy book ever. But I think my experience with the genre actually helped more with the reread than just rereading it. So if I had read it for the first time with the experience that I have now, I don't think it would have been nearly as confusing, because I read it again and I was like, why was I confused by this? Like, there's still some confusing things, but like
100%.
Yeah.
This is what I talked about, because when I reread Gardens, because it was like 10 years later. So I basically remembered nothing. Like I remembered literally Tattersale because I remembered liking her.
Same.
That was like the only thing I remembered. And like a couple times while I read it, things came back a little bit. I was like, oh, I kind of remember this. Okay.
It's like, how did I not remember Ralik Nam and oh my gosh, his name starts with an M. It's his, what's his name? He's the like Aramis type character.
Mallet?
Something like that. He's anyways, like that whole group, they're so good.
It was, well, like I remember Tattersall, like the name Whiskey Jack. I couldn't remember who that was. Like I remembered that name. And then like the one funny thing about rereading Gardens of the Moon is like right before that certain character turns into a marionette, it came back to me and I was like, I totally forgot how freaked out I was by this when I first read this.
It's freaky.
I totally agree, because I actually enjoyed Gardens, but I was like, I don't understand half of what happened.
Right.
And then when I reread it, I was like, 10 years of high fantasy reading experience has completely changed how I approach these books, because I no longer worry when I don't understand. Like I was so consumed the first time, and now I'm like, whatever. If it's important, I'll remember it. If it's not, I'm sure they'll remind me.
It's
like
fine.
that's how I'm like, whatever.
Yep.
What's funny though is like Dead House Gates was really hard for me. I actually really like Gardens of the Moon. When I reread it, like I was like, Gardens is such a good book. I was so into it.
I liked it so much better the second time too.
Dead House Gates, I just really struggled getting into it. It wasn't until like the very end of the book that all of a sudden it was like, I get why Dead House might be better on a reread. Like I get it, because it felt a little like Oathbringer for me, where it just really dragged. But then once you get the vision, it's like, okay,
it's
well,
like,
now
wow,
I understand what's happening. So like the ending really saved that book for me, because the ending like quarter of that book is extremely strong.
Yes.
Extremely moving. Like extremely great. So I enjoyed overall like Memories of Ice a little more, just because I felt like it was more consistent for me.
Yeah.
Like throughout it. But Malazan's hard, because for Memories of Ice, for example, it took me like 7 weeks to read that book. I had to keep taking breaks. And what's funny is like 5 of those 7 weeks were in part 2, because I just could not get into it. Like if I'm into the characters, then I'm like, I'm reading. But when I'm not, for whatever reason with that book, it is hard to push through because it's just so dense. So it's just like a weird experience that way.
Yeah.
I've taken a break because I just needed a break from like a book that takes a long time. Sometimes you just need instant gratification.
100%. Yep. Yep.
And plus, I'm so excited about Game of Thrones right now. I'm trying to follow up
capitalize on that.
Yeah, like why don't I read what I'm really excited about?
Imagine that.
Yeah, what a shocker.
Weird idea. Oh goodness. Let's see. Justin, is it Booker? Off topic, I'm the biggest, fattest reading slump ever. Reading slump for the ages. Yuck, that really sucks. I'm sorry, Justin. Any book suggestions? Stuff that I think I will like, but I can't get into anything. Do you have some favorites that we can work off of?
Yeah, give me some things to work off of.
Like, what are your favorite books to read?
Because I have lots of reading slump suggestions, but it depends on.
Yep. That's another thing. I don't know if you get asked this a lot. Like, I recommend a good fantasy book for beginners. And I'm like, what have they read prior to this? Like, what kind of books do they like outside of fantasy? Are they coming off of like fantasy TV shows? Because those are completely different recommendations. Yeah. Somebody who reads classics, I'm going to recommend a completely different fantasy than like, oh, I watched Game of Thrones and loved it. Now I want to read a book,
Totally. I think I get more the suggestion of like how to jump from YA to adult, which is like a lot easier for me to answer because I know a lot of those books that like walk that line. Sanderson's always my first because like Mistborn truly is a great bridge between those things. I always feel like, but yeah, you just need so much more information. That's the hard thing with book recommendations. It's like find a booktuber who has a lot of your opinions and then just stick with them.
Something that it's kind of amazing that we've been going for 2 hours, so I'm not going to like keep you all night, even though we could.
It's so easy.
One thing that we should definitely briefly touch on that we haven't talked about at all tonight is indie fantasy. Hi.
You're an indie writer?
Yeah.
I'm married to an indie writer.
Speaking of which, so being married to an indie writer, do you ever feel like you would delve into writing? Good night, buddy.
What's so funny? Sorry, did you have more to that question before I just?
No, I was just, my son wanted a hug. Good night. Sorry.
I understand that. What's so funny is like, Zach read fantasy like as a kid and then didn't really as an adult. And so when we got married, it was actually like I was the one who like reintroduced him because I never stopped being a nerd. And I wrote a lot as a kid. And so what's so funny is Zach, he's really musical. So he had written like a lot of songs and like poetry. Yeah. But hadn't really done like longer form writing. But at the time I was like, got reinterested in trying to maybe spruce up some old stories, try again. Yeah. And so we kind of started writing a little bit together.
Oh, sure.
And then he actually like did the thing and I didn't. And so kind of, but I actually don't think I will ever write, mostly because I think I'm decent. At least I consider myself decent. Like I can come up with like world building, come up with interesting characters, come up with like a good overall plot, but I am terrible at like the mini plots. Do you know like how to have a good book, you need like other things going on? And like I just couldn't conceptualize like quite how to do it. And then also like a lot of my book ideas that I had been really attached to, like there's this one world that's really been with me. Like I started writing in that world maybe like in middle school and continued writing for like years over my life, just kind of like with this idea and these characters. And it started being like, I kind of outgrew it. Like it's a YA series, but I don't read YA anymore. So I am not on beat with what is happening in YA. And for me personally, I don't really want to be the person who's writing for a group that I'm no longer reading.
Sure.
Because like I don't understand it anymore. I don't know the genre. And it doesn't feel like I can upgrade it to adult, just what it was. And so I just kind of like, I just don't think it's in me as a writer. Yeah. I'd be interested maybe in dabbling in a short story.
Yeah.
But I'm also just like so critical of myself that I don't know if I could ever get over it. I'm not. this is the other thing. I'm very math minded. I'm just like not super creative either. So it's just like not an avenue I feel personally comfortable. Like I'm just not like really a creative. So for me, it's just like easy to kind of get rid of it as an idea. It's kind of a fun thing, but I just don't think ultimately I'm gonna do it.
I mean, the nice part is if you get to a point where you're like, hey, I'd like to kind of dabble in that again, you're in the perfect community for people to be able to like brainstorm and help you like, you know, figure it out within your own house and outside of it.
Totally. Yeah. I think it might be a vulnerability too far. Like here I am on BookTube. That's my vulnerability for the lifetime.
Yeah, I mean, I think, you know, people talk a lot about vulnerability in writing, but I think, I mean, putting yourself out on BookTube is a very vulnerable craft as well. I mean, yeah, it's very vulnerable.
So have you been writing for a long time? Because you said the idea came in high school, right?
So phased, actually, no, it was more just, I think
it was later and then you reflected on your experience.
Compounded frustration. Yeah. Over time. And I was, you know, deciding that I wanted to pick up fiction again after almost a decade of not seriously pursuing it, and wanted to start with something that would just be fun and like, you know, something I was excited about, because I had some major fantasy worlds, like the one that I'm publishing in November takes place in a world that I started developing back in early college. So I had some epic fantasy ideas, but I knew I wasn't quite ready to write them yet. And so phased was kind of the natural stepping stone to get me to jump back into fiction, delve into a story I really cared about. And it definitely moved from, oh, I'm writing this to kind of defy the supernatural trends to of something a lot more personal very quickly. But yeah, I mean, when I was very, very little, I was building cities and waging wars and in the basement of the house. So I feel like that was kind of like the my version of childhood epic fantasy writing. So yeah, long time.
Yeah, it's funny. All of my early stories are all you know exactly what I was reading, and or video game playing at the time in my like elementary school writing. Like they were so inspired. Like, oh, that's when I read Phantom Tollbooth. That's when I was playing such and such a video game, because it's like so copied.
So because you're a gamer too, so you're a Zelda fan.
Huge Zelda fan.
Huge Zelda fan. Yeah. What are some of the best favorite video games of all time?
Great. Let's start youth. The Paper Mario series.
Okay.
Paper Mario 1 and 2 in particular, extremely formative games. Tomb Raider, especially for the PC 1 through 3. Let's see. Sorry, this is, why would you ask me this question?
We keep putting each other back on the spot.
I was like, or later in life would be obviously Zelda, Dragon Age, specifically Inquisition. Which I know is not the most popular in the franchise, but I just love Dragon Age Inquisition so much.
I actually bought it for my PS3 on a whim the other day because I want to try it.
So good. And then also Undertale.
I've heard of that. Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Undertale, I think, changed my life. I always tell everyone to play that. It is an experience. It is not just a video game.
Yeah.
Those are probably my favorites. I feel like I'm forgetting some, but yeah.
Yeah, I think it's awesome too that there's such an overlap with books and video game, and you know, talking about us kind of coming in here in the male dominated spaces. Speaking of video games.
Yeah, it's so funny because my video gaming is so I want to be alone in a world. No one is talking to me. Like I have not played any of those like online
multiplayer
games. Video gaming has been a very safe space. Like I'm never interacting with other people.
I'm just
in video gaming.
I just game with a group of friends that I've known for a really long time. So it's very fun, and we all know each other really well.
Yeah, that's the kind of gaming Zach likes. But I will say Twilight Princess is so underrated. So Ryan, yeah, it's an underrated Zelda game in my opinion. People always like to hate on Twilight Princess, and I think it was a great game.
Yeah.
So I haven't played all the Zelda games. You know, like I played Ocarina, Twilight Princess, Skyward Sword, Breath of the Wild, Tears of the Kingdom. think those are the only 5. So I'm not like, I can't say like I've played every Zelda game.
I've played most of Twilight Princess on the Wii, so that is the only.
Well, isn't Twilight Princess a Wii game? No. It's a GameCube game.
It's on the Wii also, but I don't know.
I only have my Wii now because they take GameCube games.
Yeah.
But, oh, you know what? You know another unpopular Wii game or GameCube game? Actually, GameCube games were the best games. Let's talk about that Nintendo-wise. I know it was a weird system, but GameCube also had Super Mario Sunshine, which I think is such an underrated game. Have you played that game?
I haven't.
Oh.
I have never played GameCube.
Oh, you haven't?
Nope. I was PS2, PC, and PS3. That's pretty much exclusively.
I was an exclusively Nintendo kid. So I had
my husband was
Super Nintendo, N64,
Yep.
GameCube, Wii, and then we did play Lara Croft on the PC. But so I just saw the Nintendo games are what I grew up with. Because I think my family was like, well, Nintendo games are more kid friendly, which is hilarious because my dad played. My mom, I don't think, realized what was in Lara Croft because my dad and I played Lara Croft together. Yeah. But I always tell people, I'm like, look, there was like 6 pixels in that entire game.
Exactly.
It's not like you really could see anything.
Yeah. Back in the old days of video game.
So funny. You know, it's funny because I have all my old systems, and so I'll plug them in sometimes for our kids to play. And like, they can't. Like, they have it too good. Like, they don't know how to play those games anymore. We play some Mario Party and stuff, but like, they can't, and it's very funny. Sometimes, like when I went back, I'm so derailing our conversation, and I'm really sorry.
It's fine. I'm not structured with these. I'm pretty chaotic.
I went back and played Super Mario 64. Have you played? You didn't have an N64, huh?
My husband did, though.
Okay, so I play that regular, like go back every few years because I just love that game. But the most recent time, I was like, we really didn't have camera angles, huh? Like, you get so used to camera angles, it gets so hard to go back when you're like, oh, this is just it. This is the angle I get, and the controller is not very precise.
Nope.
And like, I'm playing Tears of the Kingdom now. Have you played any Tears of the Kingdom?
Not yet.
Sorry.
I'm sorry. I'm so behind.
Best game I've ever played. I just today, like, Zach is so tired of me talking about this video game. I keep discovering something new and being like, okay, this is the thing I discovered tonight about Tears of the Kingdom. And then we'll go back to self-published.
That's fine.
There's a region in Tears of the Kingdom where you're in a desert. And if you walk into the sun, it's too hot for you. But if you find shade, it's okay. Like, it won't injure you.
Yeah.
The mechanics. This, like, the sun moves in this game. Like, the mechanics that this video game can tell the difference of when I'm, like, standing in the sun or the shade. And then I go back and play the N64 where it's like, nope. It's like nope.
Nobody cares.
Makes sense. Anyway, what are your favorite video games? Don't let me dominate this.
I grew up, so like super old school. I grew up on like Dig Dug and Pac-Man. So that was like some of the original.
Well, I had some of the original PC games, like Magic School Bus kind of one.
Sure.
Yeah. Go around and pick up the kids in the school bus.
Yep. Yeah. I mean, there was a lot of the old, like, my dad and I used to spend hours trading high scores back and forth with the old, like, Microsoft Windows pinball game.
Oh my gosh, that game was incredible.
Addicting. It was so addicting.
You know what? Those Microsoft games were so good.
They were.
They were Chips Challenge.
No.
Man, that game, that had a hold on me.
I played the heck out of the free levels of Fate when it was around.
Oh, I never played that one.
Those dungeon runner, like, my favorite game. My favorite game of all time now is Shadow of the Colossus. It's an incredible PS game. But way back when, I used to play a game that no longer exists called Dungeon Runners, and it was incredible. I played it for hours and hours and hours. Loved it.
Were you a Neopets kid?
No.
Okay, just curious.
I liked Dungeon Runner, fight the boss, collect the treasure, like, you know, the kind of thing you can do for hours. Skyrim, Oblivion, Guild Wars, My favorite, actually, one of my gateway games on an actual console after the PC was Star Wars Racer Revenge.
Okay,
pod racing was still love it, still play it.
I had pod racing on the N64. I'm sure it was different, but
it was that was a fun game. I love racing games, but mostly pod racer.
Yeah, we had on the N64 you had a game called Rush, which my family played all the time.
Yeah.
Have you heard of that one? It's like where you race and blow people up. That was like, we played that for hours.
It's so true. If you've never played Shadow of the Colossus,
I haven't even heard of it. I'm gonna just put it on my phone real quick.
As an epic fantasy fan, you're gonna be blown away by this game. It is absolutely stunning.
There's a question, am I gonna have a way to play it though?
And it I think, is it available is it just on PlayStation? I can't remember.
If I could get it on the PlayStation 4, we never just ended up getting a PlayStation 5.
It's on the PlayStation Store. Like, we downloaded it.
Okay.
I have a PS3 still.
I have a PlayStation. If you're a PlayStation, did you ever play because I did actually play some PlayStation games besides Dragon Age. Oh shoot. Now that I'm just wanting to bring up this game, I can't remember it. Did you ever play a game where a guy got like shadow powers and then neon powers and you were like around a city and can someone help me? What is that game called? It's on the PS4. Oh, they're saying I can get this on the PS4. Oh, good.
It was just remastered, Andrew, recently. Ben and I just downloaded it again. It's Shadow of the Colossus is a game that will haunt you. Like, you will not stop thinking about it when you're done.
Here's a question. How scary is it? Because I'm a little bit of a baby. And so if a video game's really scary, I can't usually handle it. If you can
handle very awesome looking but dangerous colossi coming to life.
But like, do I have to fight them?
Yes.
Oh no.
It's amazing. It is a rush. It is definitely a rush.
Oh no, I
was
for sure. So scared.
It's so good.
Pete, yes, Infamous. Did you ever play Infamous?
No, but I feel like I've heard of that.
That game was so fun. Here's the thing about me and gaming. I am 100%er. So like, I sit down to like Tears of the Kingdom. I sit down to Dragon Age Inquisition. I sit down to Infamous. I 100% it. It is every trophy. It is every side quest. So I don't end up playing a lot of video games a year. It's like I pick my one video game and then that is what I am playing for the next 300 hours.
Yeah. So the thing with Colossus, the story is very simple, but it is incredibly profound. The artwork in this game is just incredible. And it's basically a game where you only have boss fights. That's it. The entire game.
This does not sound, Tori, like a game that I am going to be capable of playing.
It's so good. It's so good.
It's scared. I like run away from it. Like, I am scared. Like, my way of playing video games is because I complete every side quest. I am too overpowered for every boss fight. That is the only way I can get through these because I know I cannot die because I have collected too much.
See, you and my husband are so similar in gaming when it comes, because I'm a tank character in every game I ever play. Like, I will get I'm up in the face of whatever I'm fighting.
Your husband an archer? You're an archer.
He is usually a mage. He's usually a mage.
Archer or mage.
I'm always a barbarian fighter tank. Yes, always.
I
also
did
the soundtrack.
Inquisition. I 100% Inquisition. Pete, I don't hate myself, so I did not 100% because I Googled it. I was like, you haven't played Breath of the Wild, so, but I looked up, I had like 350 Korok seeds, and I was like, I must be getting close. And then it was like, there are 900. And I was like, well, I don't hate myself, so I'm going to 100% everything else. But I did 100% Inquisition over 4 games. So I played 4 different games of Inquisition, and I think I totaled like 350 hours. I loved that game. But it was over like 2 years. Like, I only played Inquisition for like 2 years of my life because I was so in love with that game. Because like,
I want to try it. I'm really excited to try it.
You chose different things and you had different relationships with people. So it was the first game I really played a bunch of different characters. Like, okay, I'm going to choose this character is super religious. This character is not. I'm going to be a dude. I'm going to be a girl. Like, anyway.
I'm not
surprised. Your husband's a Ravenclaw?
Yes.
I'm a Ravenclaw.
I would never have guessed. Never have.
What are you, Tori? This is one of my favorite questions.
What do you think?
Hufflepuff.
No.
Gryffindor?
No.
You're a Slytherin?
Yeah.
That was my last guess.
Yep. I'm very Slytherin.
I'm Ravenclaw, and as a kid, I used to guess other things, but my secondary house is for sure Slytherin.
Sure,
So I
can see that.
Yeah.
I think nobody ever talks about it. I feel like there's always like kind of a secondary house.
Yes.
That definitely changes like what type of main house you are.
Yes.
Yep.
Absolutely.
And my husband and my best friend are both Ravenclaw. And it's funny because a lot of people are like, you're not Slytherin. And I'm like, you don't know me well enough.
You don't know me.
Yeah. I'm very Slytherin. But Slytherins are also cool. So
did you read Harry Potter as a kid?
No.
No. Okay. You read it as an adult.
Nope.
Oh, when did you read it?
I haven't read it.
Oh, you haven't read it. You just know your house.
Oh yeah.
Have you seen the movies? Yes. Okay. So like you have some.
I know the story. Yeah.
Okay.
I'm actually hoping to read it this next year.
That'd be fun. So I am an embarrassing Harry Potter fan. Like it was my personality for like a decade of my life. So
that's fair.
I have very strong feelings about Harry Potter, but I always ask that question because as a kid, all of my friends wanted to be in Gryffindor because that was the main characters. And like that's normal. But like as a kid, I specifically remember telling my friend, like, they don't seem like my people. Like I was 10 and being like, I think the Ravenclaw sounds pretty good.
Well, actually.
It's always funny to me, like as I got older and kept reading, I was like, I knew myself. Like I knew like that bravery thing does not sound like me. No, thank you.
I think one of the things that I've noticed, and like, I think it's funny because at, mid 30s, this is an important conversation to have. It is. I have always known I was a Slytherin. Same. Like I was like, yeah, I mean, that's not shocking.
When did you
either.
see the movies?
High school.
Okay.
College.
So you Harry Potter is like younger.
Yeah, I grew up in a very conservative household, so I did not read the books as a kid, but I watched the movies when I was a little bit older. But yeah, Slytherins always, people are like, oh, but Slytherins are evil or mean. I'm like, no, you don't get it. The most loyal character in the story was a Slytherin, just saying.
Yeah, that is true.
So.
Also, this is like, I take Harry Potter too seriously when I have so many house feelings because I'm like, you have to understand, like the book is written for kids. So it starts so black and white, but like as the series goes on, especially in the books, if you make it to like the ending, like you can see J.K. Rowling kind of stepping back and realizing, well, it doesn't really make sense that all the Slytherins would be bad guys. So like it already gets like rolled back. And so I'm like, if you actually look at the houses, like just not the characters, but just like on their qualities, it makes it a much more interesting discussion.
Yes.
Of like where you would be. But I have famously among my own friends, they call it the 10-minute Zach calls it the 10-minute Hufflepuff speech rant, where I talk about why I'm tired of people being sad they're Hufflepuffs.
Yes, I get upset about this too.
And like, I'm not even a Hufflepuff. So people are like, oh, are you one? I'm like, no, that's not the point. Hufflepuffs are important. They're
so important. Without Hufflepuffs, like we would all the world would explode.
Well, all of my closest friends have been Hufflepuffs. I apparently gravitate towards the Hufflepuff because they're good friends.
Yeah, they are.
Every Ravenclaw needs a Hufflepuff to take care of them sometimes. Like it's just how it is. Who's your husband? Ravenclaw. We just talked about that.
Well, see, here's the thing. He's, in my opinion, he's the type of main house that has a very strong secondary house because he is 100% strong secondary Hufflepuff. Okay. Strong Hufflepuff vibes.
Okay. He's like the Hermione, where like he's in Ravenclaw because of what he values, but everyone's always like, why aren't you in Hufflepuff?
But he had the same thing. He was like, I'm not a Hufflepuff. And I got so upset at him because I was like, Hufflepuffs are awesome. And like, as a Slytherin, Hufflepuffs are very balancing to me.
Yes.
So like, and I think for Ravenclaw probably too. Yeah. So it makes sense. Like
it's what helps people when I've always told them what helps them like separate it, as I always say, like a house isn't what you are, a house is what you value, which are sometimes the same, but not always. So as a Hufflepuff, it is not because you are not smart or strong or brave or cunning or anything. It is that you value loyalty and friendship more than those other things.
Right.
And so like that is what makes it. And then when I tell people that, they're like, oh, I get it. Because like I do value that stuff. And it's like, see? So you can also be smart and brave and whatever you want to be, but it's about your values. See, that's what I'm saying. Like, it's a little embarrassing how serious
this is the right corner of the internet for this conversation. Yeah, Lauren and I had a conversation about Ravenclaw and Slytherins yesterday or the day before, 2 days ago. And yeah, we were talking a lot about.
And Gryffindors are also, they don't want to admit that they're the same side of, different
two sides of the same coin. Yeah. I think that's one of the reasons why there's, because honestly, even in the story, if you look at Draco and Harry, like,
super similar.
They're super, like, don't tell anybody we said that, but and I don't know. I think it's funny because, like, for a long time, I thought I would be sorted into. I know I'm a Slytherin, but I feel like I'm going to be sorted into Gryffindor. And I wasn't, which it was kind of a sigh of relief, not because I didn't want to be a Gryffindor, because I was like, I knew. I was like, I'm not.
When I took the official test, I was like, I have identified with Ravenclaw since I was 10 years old. And if this test tells me something else right now, I'm going to be upset. So sad because that's how what I feel.
Yeah. Well, and that's the thing what I always tell people too, when they talk about Slytherins, it's like, okay, loyalty, you may have to work harder to get it with a Slytherin, but once you have it, it's like, we will bury bodies for you. Okay. Like, so exactly, Andrew.
Exactly.
Yeah, exactly. We're the shadow of the heroes. That's fair.
Changing your values.
Yeah. I feel like Malazan will do that. It asks you to philosophize about your values and your
in life.
For sure. Yep. Because there's some characters where I still am like, how did you make me care about this character
when I shouldn't?
What does this say about me as a human being? Like, like existential crisis moment. But well, we have been going for almost 2.5 hours, and I don't want to take you away from your family any longer, but I am so glad that we finally got a chance to chat, and it was awesome. And I feel like we could have gone for 5 hours, to be honest.
We could have. I didn't know we had so many unpopular opinions.
Do you have Voxer? I'm gonna have to be like sending you messages. I'll just go over to Instagram. But yeah, what are you reading as a kind of a final? I
started Clash of Kings.
Nice, good for you.
Is that the second book? I keep getting confused.
Oh,
I started the second Game of Thrones book. Yeah. I think it's called Clash of Kings. That was my reward after I picked my finalists in Spiffbow. My reward was that I got to read the second Game of Thrones.
Because Storm of Swords is the third one, then Feast for Crows and Feast for Crows.
I always say Feast for Crows by accident, so yes. Clash of Kings.
I think.
Maybe.
Darn fantasy
What are
titles.
you reading?
What am I reading? I'm reading the second book in Mike Shackle's Last War trilogy, Fool's Hope. I read the first one. The first one is We Are the Dead. Big skull on the cover.
Yeah,
cool
totally.
Skull mask. Love it. It's now my new standard for Grimdark. As of a book and a half into the trilogy. So I'm excited. It's very good. So also strong female characters, since we were talking about that earlier. Excellent female characters. So thank you so much for hanging out with me this evening. And thank you to everyone in the chat for such an awesome discussion. And if I missed your comments, I love you and I'm so sorry. But thanks for hanging out with us, you guys. And definitely, again, if you are not subscribed to Bookborn's channel, you should go down in the description and click the link, because she's got a lot of great videos that you should be watching. And yeah, I hope you guys all have an awesome night. Bye.